This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, get up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, give us something to talk about in the post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, or even contribute to the discussion in the episode itself, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. Hey, Richard, I got a question for you.
What is it?
A classic game of Would You Rather. Mm-hmm. Would you rather have the cheese touch or the Dementor's kiss?
Oh. So the Dementor's kiss is said to be, essentially taking any possibility of ever feeling happiness away from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so does the cheese touch, because no one will talk to you.
Yeah, exactly. The cheese touch feels more alienating, should we believe the symptoms listed to us in Diary of a Wimpy Kid. But hey, let's maybe we can answer this Would You Rather at the end, because we've actually got a couple more diaries and a couple more Wimpy Kids to talk about
wow.
this fortnight.
Wow, someone's been hitting the books and coming up with some funny stuff. Funny stuff.
Yeah, I've been hitting the books to come up with funny stuff.
Oh yeah, hitting the funny books, the funny pages.
Books are pretty relevant to this episode.
They'll probably come up a fair bit.
Of film franchise Fortnights on the Cult Popture podcast. My name is AJ, and I'm joined by Richard, are you cosplaying as our lead character in today's franchise? Because you've got brown hair and glasses.
And I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt.
Famously very Potterian. That's one of those things that J.K. Rowling announced after the books came out. It was like, oh, by the way, Harry was wearing a Hawaiian shirt for a lot of this.
Yeah, anytime I'm not explicitly describing what he's wearing, it's because it's implied he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. But yeah, we are. This is Film Franchise Fortnights, a podcast where every 2 weeks we talk about a different film franchise. We're doing something a little bit different this time. We haven't done it in a long time, which is we've actually split this up. And this is the Harry Potter franchise we're talking about, which consists of 8 films and then, as of now, 3 prequel films, and the Wizarding World franchise, I should say. But we're going to be splitting it up. So we're going to be talking about the first 4 films based on the first 4 books here today. And then in 1 week from now, we'll do the remaining 4 films based on the remaining 3 books. And then the week after that, we will do the 3 Fantastic Beasts films.
Based on the one encyclopedia.
Yeah, so we're going to be covering this in the same way that the Lego games cover Harry Potter.
Right. And you said we haven't done this for a long time, and I thought that was quite funny, because so long, in fact, that I would have considered the format an obsolete one, something we don't do anymore, because the last time, ladies and gentlemen, that we split up a franchise for no other reason than because we wanted to, was Back to the Future, which hilariously was only 3 films. What was Back to the Future, our 4th or 5th episode of the whole show? And it was...
the episode was 90 minutes, and we thought no one's going to listen to a 90-minute podcast, so we split it into 3. That's one of those very funny things looking back. The other really funny thing that I always think about with this podcast is that we release on Mondays in New Zealand. It was originally Film Franchise. We talked about being Film Franchise Fridays, but we wanted to keep it fortnightly to keep our workload a little bit lighter. But the original release was every Friday, but then we moved it to Mondays because we didn't want to steal the thunder from our series Talking During the Movie, which also came out on Fridays.
A series which I am considering unlisting from YouTube now, about 4 years later. That is pretty funny.
It's so funny that's I don't know, it feels like one of those crazy, Clorox actually came before Oreos.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, so the reason, if anyone's wondering the reason why we're splitting up, because usually we split up franchises, but never arbitrarily, except for Back to the Future and this, I guess. Like, what the original plan was to do that, the 8 Harry Potter films and 1 blockbuster episode, and then do the 3 Fantastic Beasts. So we'd, like, split it when, like, the series changes somewhat. Like, we split all the James Bond actors, and we split Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. But what, do we have a reason? We're just low on time?
Long time. I've had a very busy week, and we're recording slightly early because I have a party tomorrow night, and you were meant to have a party the night after. But yeah, and just I've been.
But I got the Dementor's kiss.
But I've just been busy like every night this week, and I got to a point where I was like, I'm not going to be able to watch these. And then, there's already a precedent for splitting the Harry Potter movies like this. There's already a precedent for us splitting a franchise like this because we did it very early on. And also, I imagine that this is going to be quite an in-depth episode or quite a discussion-heavy episode. And so I thought, you know what, it's like, let's make it... I would rather do 1, 2 sort of episodes where we can keep our steam a little bit rather than one that we lose it towards the end and we're just trying to get out of there. So I think this is going to result in better discussion as well, hopefully. But
when you say when you say there's already a precedent for splitting these movies up, you are talking about the Lego games.
I am talking about the Lego games, yeah.
But nothing else.
Nothing else.
Because to me, the natural split in the series would be the first 3, the last 4, I think, at least in terms of the books. That's where it felt like it split for me.
And what about the 4th one? Or just the books, man.
Say?
Oh, the first 3.
Yeah, just in terms
the books. Yeah, it's
like
interesting.
The Prisoner of Azkaban, then Goblet of Fire onwards, because that was... Goblet of Fire was the first one that came out after I was aware what the series was.
Yeah. Like, to be fair, though, we are splitting it by good directors and David Yates.
And half and half as well, 4 and 4, because the movies...
So there's plenty of reasons, but... Yeah, so the movies we're going to be talking about today are Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Yes, Philosopher's Stone. Mind blown.
Can you say that, Americans?
Any Americans listening out there. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, or I always say Azkaban, but I don't know why.
I say it like Hagrid says it. Azkaban prison!
And Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So there is... something that we should address at the top of this episode because there's few people have wondered why we're covering this franchise now. Rightly so, fair enough. But first,
Happy
we should
Pride Month,
Happy
everyone.
Pride Month. We should mention this was a Patreon suggested episode. We're not doing this to tie into Pride Month or anything.
We're not being smart. We're not being disrespectful.
And we're also not, throwing our patrons under the bus because I do think, and this is why, that we should talk about this up top. There's obviously the elephant in the room of J.K. Rowling and her recent activity. She's come under fires in recent years for being, and has been labelled a TERF. If you're not sure what that term means, it means trans exclusionary radical feminist. It's essentially someone who excludes the rights, a feminist who excludes the rights of trans women, and when trying to, and during their advocacy for women's rights, and so often,
so not a feminist,
but it's the kind of thing of like that. They're in their mind, they're like, we've tried so hard to do feminism, and now these people are trying to piggyback on the hard work we've already done, kind of thing. This started in 2 years ago, 2020. She made a tweet that took issue with an article using the term people who menstruate rather than women. When it was talking about biologically menstruating and things, and so we now know that people can still menstruate who identify as men. And then she doubled down on this, continued to double down on it, wrote all these articles, and there's a YouTube channel called ContraPoints, has a good sort of breakdown of everything going on. It's like 90 minutes long. And glamour.com has a timeline of events. Because I think a lot of people out there are just knowing everyone hates J.K. Rowling now, something to do with transphobia, but not actually don't know the details or the sort of breakdown of what actually happened.
And this is the like path we walk down doing this episode for Film Franchise Fortnights. Like I kind of dread doing the big blockbuster franchises because I think it's more fun to do the niche ones that no one's done a podcast on. But boy, do I wish we maybe did this one a few years ago instead of now, because now it feels like the worst time in history to be talking about Harry Potter.
Well, there's just this thing going over it. So this whole debacle has introduced a generation of people to the idea of death of the author, which is essentially the idea of removing an author's intent from their works. So, and separating the art from the artist is a similar sort of thing.
It's funny, isn't it, that death of the author can be applied to J.K. Rowling, who wrote these books about accepting who you are, and like even though you're different, you're still loved. Like, it's death of the author in such a strange way, because it's not like I don't know if I would. Maybe I haven't read them since I was 20, but like I feel like there isn't like trans or transphobic themes in Harry Potter.
There is some in some of Robert Galbraith's works, which is the pseudonym she writes under now.
Yeah.
But the it felt like this needed to be addressed up top. I don't want this like necessarily casting a nasty shadow over the whole thing, or just this podcast to be just entirely us ripping on J.K. Rowling. I think as we get to Fantastic Beasts, we will more, because that'll be more about how she's a shitty screenwriter. But yeah, I think the Harry Potter stories and movies are incredibly important to a lot of people, and they, growing up for a lot of people that felt like they didn't fit in elsewhere, had this like magical world they could escape to, and at the same time as disagreeing with J.K. Rowling and her beliefs, I don't want to then also just throw out like how good these can and have made people feel.
And also, it's one person in a pool of thousands of filmmakers and actors and things that made these films possible. If we're talking about the books specifically, maybe it'll be different, but
so in short, fuck J.K. Rowling. Trans women are women, trans men are men. Let's talk about these magical boy movies.
So you said just before that that Harry Potter means a lot to a lot of people, specifically people our age. You and I are both in our late 20s, to the point where like the go-to joke that the younger generation make about us now is primarily Harry Potter based. I've noticed it's millennials are all obsessed with which house they are, which Hogwarts house they are, and yada yada yada. So I guess we usually on Film Franchise Fortnights, with a franchise that means a lot to people, we discuss our personal relationships with the franchise. So, Richard, is Harry Potter important to you?
So, Harry Potter, the person or the franchise, do you mean?
The franchise.
So, growing up, my sister was massively into Harry Potter and still is. And then my mum got into them as well. And I remember listening to the Stephen Fry read audiobook of the first one or two. I have read the first book. I've definitely read the first book. I'm pretty sure I've read all of the second book. I think I've read half of the third one.
Wow! So you're very much not the Potterhead that many are.
I saw all of the films in the cinema. I saw them all opening weekend, if not opening night. I remember going to the first one, and up until very recently, I still had my movie ticket for Philosopher's Stone from 2001.
Wow.
And it was this beautiful family experience. And yeah, I remember my mum and sister, like, as the later movies were coming out, they would go to I think they went to like the midnight sort of releases of the book, and it got to the point where it's like, we have to buy 2 of each one because I'm not waiting for you to finish it, and so they became obsessed. And I again, like you said, there's the sort of millennial shame of these movies now, even removed from the J.K. Rowling stuff, that it is like this cheesy thing that millennials are into, and also a lot of people nowadays want to distance themselves from Harry Potter. But I still think there's so much good stuff in this film franchise. I can't obviously speak for the books, but there's a lot of stuff I like really, really like in these, and they are it's kind of an amazing feat having this series of films where the main characters aged in real time. All of them grew up into like as good actors as they needed to be. They're not necessarily Oscar winners or anything like that, but they all aged fairly gracefully, aged like with their characters, and no major controversies surrounding any of the actors anyway. But it's just this kind of incredible film franchise that that's interesting.
I would also say, and perhaps this is controversial. Sorry, it's an episode about Harry Potter.
But I agree
it'll probably
with
be the least. It'll probably it's probably the least controversial opinion about Harry Potter. Considering, I would say something that occurred to me watching the fourth one last night. This might be the longest franchise in which, at least I would say, the first film you could probably comfortably call the worst one. Maybe.
Yeah.
I can't think of another franchise where I think it gets better, sort of. Not each one is better than the last. I'll say this: all 8 are pretty good, and the quality doesn't really dip. I think some of the charm falls away, and I think some people are probably very nostalgic for the first 2 and will probably hate that I just said that. But I think, at least in terms of the filmmaking as a craft, I think that they get more mature and more complex as they go on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing as well, that it's that similar sort of thing with like what Pixar was doing for a while, where it's like the movies are aging with the fans. Like Toy Story 3, while very much a kid's film, it deals with themes that, you know, people who were a kid when the first one came out would have been going through by the time the third one came out.
Exactly.
And yeah, I agree with you there. I also think that as other than the MCU, this is probably the second franchise we've covered, like the second longest franchise we've covered, where I kind of expect most everyone listening to this to have seen all of them.
Sure, yeah.
And even the MCU, not really. It's like, you know, a lot of people, like you and I, are, you know, completionists with that kind of thing. But there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, I haven't seen the second Ant-Man, you know.
Yeah, I'm now stuck watching show after show on Disney Plus that I don't even really like, because I'm that much of a completionist to the MCU.
Yeah, but yeah, that like Harry Potter, it's you don't have people, you never hear of people that are like, oh yeah, I haven't seen the fifth one. You know, like most people have seen all of these of our generation, and probably multiple times as well.
Yeah. So my experience with Harry Potter, if anyone is interested,
I should just move on.
So I provide, I think, a essential perspective to the Harry Potter conversation, which is kid in a Christian home. Okay,
Yeah, right.
because these books came out, and every Christian in the world was like thrown into this thing they'd never had to deal with before, which was are witches and wizards inherently evil? I remember telling my teacher when I was 7 that I thought witches were real. They were just people that followed Satan, and she told me off, and I think I had like a letter written home because I'd said I'd mentioned the devil or something crazy like that to my teacher.
It's very good.
But outside of that, my parents, as far as how like okay with it my parents were, I remember they let my brother read them, and he got very into them, and they were sort of like tentative but not too worried. And I remember sitting on my parents' bed one afternoon for some reason, and my dad sat next to me, and he just started reading the first one to me. And I remember being like, "Are you serious? Are you actually reading Harry Potter?" I was 7. Are you actually reading Harry Potter to me? And I remember we read the first 2 books together, which probably took a couple of weeks. And then he was like, "I'm not reading you the third one. It's too dark." The day wasn't too dark. The subject matter.
I can't see the book, AJ.
I can't see the pages. I can't see the words. And that was the last one that I read for 13 years. So I kind of, if you've been listening to this podcast for not too long, probably as early as the God's Not Dead episode, you'll know that I was relatively devout until my early 20s.
When you met me.
So... Yeah. So up until then, I wouldn't say it was the same with like Lord of the Rings, where I like actively was like, I hate Harry Potter to try and be cool. But it was like something I wasn't that interested in. I did see all of the movies though, up until I think the last one I saw in theaters was Order of the Phoenix, and then I stopped caring about them because I hadn't read the books. And then I remember actually going back. So the first film we're going to talk about in a minute, like I remember going to Philosopher's Stone and it being like a massive deal because
absolutely.
it came out like the same year my dad had read them to me. So like it was huge that it had come out. I don't think I saw Chamber of Secrets in cinemas, and I think I saw Then I think I saw 3, 4, and 5 in cinemas. But then when I was 20 years old, I did a little project called Never Have I Ever, where I wanted to do something I'd never done every week for the whole year. And the lamest one was, I'm going to read all the Harry Potter books, because I've never done that. Like, I say lamest because another one was like fucking bungee jumping, right? So I did all this cool stuff, and one of them was just reading a book or reading 7 books.
Well, one of them was like having the Jelly Belly soda, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That one wasn't very good either. So I read all of them, and I really enjoyed the books for the most part. Maybe we'll get into them as we talk about the storylines of each movie. And then I watched all the movies in a row. And what I thought was interesting about that was that watching the movies right after reading the books, I found the movies incredibly disappointing.
Right.
Like really, really disappointing. All of my favourite stuff felt cut out of it or rushed.
Big Peeves fan, do you know?
Yeah, big Peeves fan. Big Peeves guy right over here. And that was the opinion I adopted from age 20 till now, for the first time I've watched them again. And so now when I log these films, I'm going onto my Letterboxd, where at some point I must have logged all the Harry Potter films, and I'm realizing like these reviews, these star ratings that I've given like almost a full extra star to every single Harry Potter movie since I last watched it, because watching them removed from the books, I think they hold up a lot better when you can't remember exactly what you're missing. So neither of us are the like big Harry Potter nerd that maybe this podcast maybe needs, but I feel like we each have a unique perspective that will potentially make this different from the, I'm sure, thousands of other Harry Potter based podcasts there have been.
Yeah, 1001 starting today.
1001. Yeah.
So the first film we're talking about is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, which came in 2001. I refuse to call it Sorcerer's Stone.
Okay.
Except for that, and when I explain the title,
do they call it Sorcerer's Stone in the dialogue?
Yes.
In the American
so we'll
version?
come to that, but first of all, the film was directed by Christopher Columbus, not the one that discovered America or claims to have discovered America. And what do you think it has?
J.K. Rowling thinks he's discovered America.
What do you think it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
I'm gonna guess pretty high, probably like 90.
No. 80,
No?
81.
Oh, yeah, still pretty high.
So, it is called the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone everywhere except the US, because Scholastic changed it, believing that American audiences were largely unfamiliar with the Philosopher's Stone concept, something I wasn't aware you had to be aware of. But every single scene where the Philosopher's Stone is mentioned was filmed twice, once with them saying sorcerers, once with them saying philosophers, so there is a version. There's also a couple scenes where the character's off screen, so it's just dubbed as saying sorcerers. J.K. Rowling has said that she regrets granting permission for the title change, but she was so desperate to get her book published at the time, and the same publisher also suggested she change her name from Joanne Rowling to J.K. Rowling, out of fear, and she was quite willing to just change her identity, which is interesting.
Excellent.
So, what is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone about, AJ?
Okay, it is about a little boy named Harry Potter who is...
he's just your run-of-the-mill kid, isn't he?
He's just Harry. So he finds out he's a wizard and he goes to Hogwarts.
What?
a wizard, and he goes to Hogwarts and he learns spells and he gets an owl that delivers his shitey mail, and he's bloody pleased about it. Sorry, that's a reference to my favourite Gary's Mod meme. Those who know will know.
You brought that up because I didn't see that video until 2016, 17. And I think it's the least funny shit I've ever seen.
Well, fair enough. I'm not here to argue its merits. So he goes to a wizarding school. His parents were killed by an evil wizard named Voldemort.
Oh, don't say
God. I hate when we cover a big, well-known franchise, and I feel like an idiot recounting the plot. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Everyone knows what this is about. Yeah. There's a Philosopher's Stone which makes you immortal, and it turns out that it was Quirrell, not Snape, who was trying to steal it to bring back Voldemort. He's got a lightning bolt scar.
Is there any kind of sporting match they play?
They play maybe the worst devised fictional sport in the history of fiction. He usually stays with his aunt and uncle, Uncle Vernon and Aunt Aunt Petunia, and his cousin Dudley Dursley, who I quite like as characters, and I wish they were in the movies more. I think they're fun. Yeah. But the best character
what's the name of the guy that plays the main
Richard Griffiths?
Yeah, Richard Griffiths. He's great.
Yeah, he passed away a few years ago. So.
Yeah.
Sad stuff. A lot of actors have
sad
passed away from sad stuff. My favorite characters are probably in the movies. My favorite character is Hagrid, played by Robbie Coltrane, who I think, especially in the first one, God, he gets some lemons of lines of dialogue that he just absolutely sells.
Yeah.
And like a lesser actor would not be able to do.
I remember when Harry is getting his letter from Hogwarts and they keep chasing him no matter what because it's magical. They go to this like cabin in the fucking middle of the ocean.
Yeah, the middle of the ocean. What is that?
And then they get like this big beating knock at the door, and then the door falls down, and you see this shadow of this towering giant, and then it's revealed to be Hagrid. He goes, "Sorry about that," and it's like I remember like watching the film this last week. I remember seeing that in the cinema, sitting in like the front row because they were the best seats we could get, and just like thinking like, oh my God, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. Like you thought it was a bad guy, but it was he immediately apologizes and has a funny voice.
It's funny because when I saw that scene, Richard, I thought it was the least funniest shit I've ever seen. No, I think he's great in the movies. Like, he's great in the books as well from memory, but the movies, I think Robbie Coltrane really brings this, like, what's the right word? Like this...
tallness?
Nah, what's the word for when something's like he's just so lovable.
Levity.
Like, he's so endearing is what I was thinking of. He's such an endearing character. My favourite character in the books was always Dumbledore, but I feel like the movies kind of fuck up what's good about Dumbledore in a lot of ways.
It's a double fuck.
Maybe not the first.
Professor Dumblefuck.
Oi, Professor Dumblefuck, what are you up to? So Dumbledore, as we just mentioned, is the headmaster. If you've never read Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what the movie's about. And there's Snape, Severus Snape, another hilarious Harry Potter meme.
And there's also the Harry Potter musical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the funny meme from that?
I don't care.
This is what happens when you've got to do a podcast in a relatively short amount of time that's packed full of 20 years of pop cultural effect. Maybe one of the most affecting franchises of the last 2 decades.
It genuinely is, and I don't want to give really any credit or too much credit to J.K. Rowling, but I think that the world created, and not even just the lore and like that she created, but the way it was brought to the screen. A lot of that was Chris Columbus in the first film. A lot of that was Alfonso Cuarón in the third film. But the look of these films, it's one of the richest fictional worlds we've been introduced to since maybe Star Wars.
For sure. But even then, I have a lot of issues with the world building in terms of it's like I can happily dunk on Rowling now, I guess.
Yeah.
For every nice thing you say, you've got to know. I like there are so many inconsistencies in this world. There's so many things that just never got answered. I feel like probably the most famous one was if you go to Hogwarts when you're 11, do you just have the intellect of an 11 or the education of an 11-year-old muggle for the rest of your life because you never learnt advanced maths or English? That's something that always really bothers me. Maybe when we talk about Quidditch, I'll talk about why that bothers me.
Oh, you got a Quidditch
Goblet of Fire. When we get to Goblet of Fire, boy howdy do I have some logical problems with that movie.
Well, should we just skip the next two movies and go straight to Goblet of Fire?
No.
Yes, so this film was directed by Chris Columbus, who you may know from Home Alone and Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, Mrs. Doubtfire, etc., etc. So, yeah, very much known for these kind of big kids films. He was one of many directors, had that. Terry Gilliam was attached for a long time and was J.K. Rowling really wanted him, and he was quite pissed off when he missed out. Steven Spielberg was in talks as well. He wanted to condense a few of the books and also make it animated with Haley Joel Osment playing Harry, and then J.K. Rowling vetoed that. She
American as well, was it?
He also wanted to see it in an American high school, but they ended up creating a rule that everyone cast had to be from the British Isles. So Robin Williams wanted to play Hagrid, but got turned away. And there's a few sort of examples there's a bunch of fame. This is another one of those franchises where everyone's got their favorite piece of behind the scenes trivia. We're not going to get to them all. Everyone's got their favorite little tiny bit. We're not going to get to them all, but that's what the cult elders are for. That's what the Discord is for. Hop in there, tell us what you love about this franchise.
That's a good way to put it. That is how we should start marketing those elements of the cult culture network community. Is tell us what. If you go to the Discord, you won't feel the need to tell us the piece of trivia that we forgot to mention,
Yeah. But, the casting for this was also obviously insane, trying to find, the core trio of 10 and 11-year-old actors. At the time, Daniel Radcliffe was seen in a film called David Copperfield, and they auditioned, thousands of boys, but they kept coming back to him. But his parents pulled him out of acting and said, he'll never be an actor again because he's got to focus on his schoolwork. And then Chris Columbus and I think the writer Steve Kloves just kept on, just really wanted this kid. And then they happened to just sit, the casting director and Steve Kloves just happened to sit behind Daniel Radcliffe and his parents at the theatre one night and convinced them to let him take the role of Harry Potter, saying no, fame isn't going to change him. He's not going to be that famous. Starring in the third biggest franchise of all time. But it's I think they did pretty well. I think their acting improves over the.
So I think this is something that I've had to readjust how I would phrase it, because I think Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson are quite bad in the first two. I think Rupert Grint's fine, but he also probably has the easiest role.
Well, and he also he improves the least.
Yeah, that's true. And it's this hard thing because at the same time, I agree with the statement of what a risk, and look how well this paid off, because by film 8, they are. They took a risk on these kids who turned out to be able to carry the series to its conclusion. And so in that sense, I'm well, I guess it was worth it, and maybe they saw something. And props to Chris Columbus, someone who probably doesn't get enough legacy credit for these films. But what I'm saying is because people are oh, they're just kids. It's no. There are plenty of kid actors who would show these guys up easily. Like,
Yeah.
you can't say, like, you can't take it easy on them because they're kids when something like E.T. exists and the kid who played Elliot in E.T. is like, gives like this breathtaking performance.
And his audition videos just always shows up on my recommended videos on YouTube.
It always shows up on my recommendations.
It's so weird. I've never watched it. It's called, like, You Got the Part, Kid.
You're right, yeah. So yeah, I just think that's interesting that like it paid off, but you certainly wouldn't be able to tell from the first two movies.
But yeah, it's like I said at the start, it's like they were good enough actors to carry it.
When everything else around them is propping up the movie so much.
Absolutely, yeah. What are your favorite parts, AJ?
I've always struggled with the Chris Columbus ones because of the acting, and I always felt like kind of strange about the response that I've got so many friends for whom these are their favorite ones because of how nostalgic they feel. Yeah, sure. And I've just never felt that nostalgia, despite having seen them when I was young. I never saw them again. I always saw 3 and 4 all the time. Like, those were the ones that I feel like I saw the most.
Talking to people this week and just saying that I was doing a lot of people, most people list 3 or 4 as their favorite. I've found.
Yeah. So in terms of my favorite bits, I mean, again, I really like Hagrid, and I think there's a lot. I think a lot of the marketing material around this film was the image of tiny little Harry Potter standing next to huge Hagrid, which I always thought was so interesting. Like, there's a really famous poster that's the two of them looking out at the Hogwarts castle, you know, and I always thought that was interesting because it's a relatively small part of the story, like his journey with Hagrid, but it's such a engaging image.
Well, I guess it's that thing of like this was still a time when people were like, "What? He's big," and like, you know, like Superman.
What's Harry Potter?
Yeah, when Superman the movie initially came out, and the tagline was just "You'll believe a man can fly," and it was like the idea that you could have a man fly on screen was just insane. It's the same thing here, where 2001 people were like, "How was one of them big and one of them small?"
Yeah. So I'd say like everything. Yeah, I just really like Hagrid. I really like the Hagrid scenes. I don't actually like the first one that much. Yeah. I think it's also, I feel like, again, like I'm cautious of saying these blanket statements as if they're public opinion, but I feel like everyone would agree that the first book is also the weakest just because it's written a lot more simply than the others.
Yeah, I also think that the just by virtue of like how it happens, like the plot, is that I'm less interested in a Harry Potter who goes around going, "What's that?" and then a know-it-all character's like, it's the gloopy stoop," and like I'm just less interested by that character who's constantly having to ask what things are. He's still, the exposition's done a lot more subtly in later films when, because there's a lot of Harry's a fucking doesn't know jack shit about magic, and he's still constantly learning shit, but it's less like we're just holding the hand of this one fucking idiot kid through this magic world.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, what are your favorite parts from the first movie?
Yeah, generally speaking, I agree with you that it's like this one's weak, and I do have that nostalgia for it. I watched it again in maybe 2019, and it was like, oh yeah, this movie is not like it's a great like TV movie. Like
totally.
If it's on TV with ad breaks, I'll watch it and I'll quite happily go off and do something in the ad break, and it's no big deal if I don't make it back in time. But sitting down and watching it, I'm like, yeah, it's not like, but like you say, like Chris Columbus deserves like some credit, and I think the franchise smartly didn't stay with that image, and Alfonso Cuarón is like responsible for that change in the third film. But yeah, like it's almost like this is what the first film needed to be, and they were able to make that change because that, you know, Deathly Hallows Part 2 is what Deathly Hallows Part 2 needed to be.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny that this movie's like 2 hours 30 as well. And like you could so imagine like they've finished the first cut of the first film and they're like, Chris, this is the shortest book and the movie is 2 hours 30. And it's a really interesting perspective on how a medium can change how a story is told. Because like I think Order of the Phoenix is like 2 hours, and that book, have you seen how fucking massive that book is?
It's the longest. Order of the Phoenix is the longest book and the second shortest movie. Chamber of Secrets is the second shortest book and the longest movie.
Is it the longest movie?
Yeah.
Huh. That's so interesting. Wow. But you know what? It flies by, and for all the 2.5 hour movie,
Chamber of Secrets is the longest one. Sorry, not Philosophers.
Yeah. No. But all of them, I would say, like they feel a lot better paced than what I remember them being when I had just read the books and watched all the movies. That was one of my biggest issues. Was like, he goes to Hogwarts by like the fucking 20 minutes. That's probably not true, but I always thought it was too rushed. But what do you even do in a movie that long? I mean,
it's definitely not 20 minutes. It's probably closer to like the 40-minute mark, I'd imagine.
No, I know. It's more like, I think Hagrid turns up after like half an hour, and I always thought that was too soon.
Should we have a look?
But yep, show me.
I downloaded the films so that I could watch them when I was on holiday. So, Harry Potter 1. What are we looking for? The first shot of Hogwarts when on the boats?
I guess so. I was more talking about Hagrid, was what I said just then.
Okay, yeah, but I'm just...
Hagrid opening the door.
Okay, so the shot of Hogwarts with the boat is 38 minutes into the film.
Okay.
Hagrid shows up.
That makes sense.
Hagrid shows up about 12 minutes in.
12 minutes?
13 minutes, yeah.
Holy shit, that's such a short amount of time.
It feels like a short amount of time.
Yeah, I know, but like that's what I mean is like, I don't know. I'm complaining about such an amorphous thing here, like an abstract feeling that something should take longer than it does. When the book itself is probably like feels pretty rushed when you read it.
Oh, so one thing I do take issue with, and I actually have a very similar story as of last night to talk about the bullshit ending of the film where Slytherin wins the House Cup.
Yes.
and then Dumbledore just fucking pulls points out of his ass and then says, "Oh, Gryffindor won." So fucking
like Dumbledore, don't do it that way. Give Gryffindor the points first. You asshole. You fucking jerk. Like, it's such a clear prejudice against Slytherin.
Yeah. So I mentioned on the Discord today that I had a funny story about a pub quiz I did last night, and I said someone has to ask me about it for a post-credit scene, so I was hiding the story behind a paywall. But no, it actually fits into this because a very similar thing happened to me and Craig last night. Craig, if you're listening, hello. He'll, of course, he'll be listening. But so we went to this pub quiz, and our team name was Jesus Wept. And it got to, they were reading out the scores. There was 9 teams, they were reading out the scores. So they were one of these places that does a bar tab for second to last place and the first 2 teams as well. And they read out and they said, like, there's a tie at the top, and we're like, oh shit. And then they reading out the names from 9th to 1st, and he said, oh, there's a tie for second place. And he read out there's 2 team names, neither of them were us. So we were like, fuck, we won. And they were like, oh, stoked. Okay. And they said, yep. And then, so we've got to do a tiebreaker for those teams, but Jesus Wept, you guys are the winner. Come collect your bar tab. Then, this fucking woman like marches down from the table next to us and talks to him. And then they're talking for a while, and we're like, it's getting late. And we're like, okay, we're just keen to go. And then he goes, he's like, there's a controversy. There's a big controversy. He's like,
wow.
so some points were deducted when they weren't meant to be because I wasn't here last week. So there has been a change at the top. And Craig and I are like, what? What the fuck is he talking about deducting points? Weird. And then so he goes, and he's like, I was told that the team next to us, whatever their name was, he's like, had came second last week, but it was 2 weeks ago. So now, and he went through the points, and then all of a sudden this team next to us had 4 more points than us. And we were like, what the fuck? And Craig and I were just looking at each other being like, what the fuck? Like, so did we not win after that? After they told us we won? We now just have it won. And so the table next to, and we were looking at them and we were like, what happened? And they were like, oh, you guys user swept. And we were like, yeah, sorry, what? And one of the women, and so this woman leans over and it's like, oh, so we 2 weeks ago we came second, and he thought it was last week, so we got so he took 10 points off us, and I was like,
what?
Sorry, what? I was like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, he'd taken 10 points off us because he thought we came second, and I was like, but why would he take points off? What the hell are you talking about? And she just kept on talking about, and I had to be like, I'm sorry. So you didn't come second last week, but if you had, why would he take points off you in this quiz? And she was like, oh, it's just, and then didn't really explain it. So we went up to collect our bar tab, and the guy was like, oh, you guys did a great job. Sorry about that. And so we said, what actually happened? And he said, so he said he wasn't MC last week. He normally is. And someone told him these people came second that week, but they didn't. And so if you win the next week, you lose 15 points from the start. If you come second the next week, you lose 10 points. So he's like, it creates an even playing field for everyone. And I said, right, so if we come back next week, we get 10 points taken off. And he was like, yeah, it creates an even playing field. And I said, probably won't come back then. and he was like, oh, I've seen people come back from minus 10 or minus 15 and still win it. And I was like, yeah, it's probably the last you'll see of us. And he's like, you got to come back and spend your bar tab. And I was like, I'll probably just use it to buy my dinner I had tonight. And it was like, and I was like, so wait, if we come back in 2 weeks, we won't have anything taken off. It's like, well, I guess not. And it's like, okay, so see you in 2 weeks, then I guess. And then so we went to pay for the bar tab. We have a $50 bar tab we won. And I went up to the counter and was like, hey, can we use this bar tab to pay for our dinner? He was like, yeah, is it valid? And I said, yep, pointed at the date on it, said till September 2022, sorry. And he's like, yeah, and I said, oh, you would just want it now, so it's like, it's valid. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, you can't use it. And I was like, why not? And he's like, oh, the expiry is here. And I was like, yeah, today is before September 2022. And he was like, yeah, no, you can't use it. And I said, why not? And he's like, yeah, you just have to come back. I said, why? And it's like, it had all these terms and conditions printed on it, nothing saying like you can't use it the day you win it. And he was like, yeah, no, you just have to come back. And I was like, where on this does it say that? And fortunately, like you AJ know what I'm like with these kind of situations. Craig was completely on my same level. Like we were both just like, this place is fucked. And like, if I'm only going to go back there to spend my $50 bar tab and nothing else. And
well, I mean, that's the answer to your question though, is like, why can't I spend it now? Because we want you to come back.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was just the weirdest experience. And then so walking out of there, Craig and I just like, what is wrong with that place? I've never heard of a pub quiz penalizing teams for doing well the next week. That's just insane to me. Why would you be a regular if you can only win every 2 weeks? Because also it's like maybe 1 or 2 points, because it's not normally 10 points. 10 points is quite a big discrepancy.
Yeah.
Like teams don't usually win by 10 points. And I know it's like, oh, Richard loves to be right and loves to win. But like, I'm not alone that's insane, right? And
no,
also to not advertise that until after you've told us we won. Like at that point, you have to give us the first prize bar tab as well.
Yeah. It's also the like inconsistency of what is a pub quiz team. It's not a set in stone thing.
Yeah.
If you change your name, if you're no longer user swept, are you a different team?
Yeah, I mean, I'm busy next Wednesday, but I would love to go back there and just be like, yeah, no, we're not the same team. You can't deduct points from us. Or just go back in 2 weeks and be like, yeah, to like treat us like an all team. But now we've got a $50 bar tab, and then we'll win it, and then we'll come back in 2 weeks and just do the same thing. So now you've just, instead of having a regular, you've now created someone who only comes back every 2 weeks and only ever spends their bar tab. They won at the last one.
I think as well as like the we've discovered off pod, and it is probably worth mentioning at some point because it's essential to any millennial conversation of Harry Potter, is that you are a Slytherin. You belong to Slytherin house, and I would love if at the end of Philosopher's Stone, they're like Slytherin won. However, Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Neville got these points for breaking the law.
Yeah.
So Gryffindor actually wins. I'd love to see you and Slytherin House like march up the front to Dumbledore and be like, "What the fuck are you talking about? What do you mean? What do you mean?
What? No,
they broke the law, and then you gave Neville points for standing up to them breaking the law."
What
is the consistency
in this
here?
scenario, though? It would be us being awarded, and then Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Neville march up and be like, "No, you forgot about the brave things we did," and then me casually walking up, being like, "So what was that about? I don't understand the rules then." Dumbledore. Right, so you're just going to choose Gryffindor every year then? Okay, well then why would I do extracurricular things to try and earn points if you're just going to change it? I thought it was set in stone.
And me as a Hufflepuff, because my main character trait is that I'm a pussy, I wouldn't have done anything if I was if Hufflepuff was stripped of the title at the last moment.
I do want to address the Slytherin accusation.
Accusation? I'm not accusing you.
I consider myself a switch.
Okay.
So I'm between Slytherin and Ravenclaw. Because I do find it's the same with like what's it called, the Myers-Briggs personality test is like everything. I think I'm INTP or something, but it's like last time I did it I was, but like my highest percentage for any of those is like 54%. It's like I'm not that much anything, and if I'm in a slightly different mood on a day, I can be one of the other one, and so. Yeah, I think it's just depending on
trait.
how evil.
The most underdeveloped house.
It depends if I'm feeling evil or smart. I'll be a Slytherin or Ravenclaw. But I do. It is very funny because you go to. We've got a store here called Typo, which is like. It's like a last minute gift store, but like kind of trendy, like brown paper with twine, kind of like that sort of.
Lots of Harry Potter,
but lots and lots of Harry Potter merch, and. I was speaking to someone who worked there one time, and they were talking about, because we were getting a present for someone who was a Hufflepuff, and it was like a mug or something like that. And they said they didn't have any Hufflepuff mugs. They had shitloads of Gryffindor, and then a handful of the other two of Ravenclaw and Slytherin. And it's this funny thing where if you care enough about Harry Potter and your house to go and buy a mug reflecting your house, you're probably a Hufflepuff. But the makers of like Harry Potter merch always assume everyone wants to be in Gryffindor because that's Harry, Ron, and Hermione's one. So they make extra Gryffindor merch, but not a lot of people actually identify as Gryffindors.
I think Gryffindor is the books are biased toward Gryffindor and paint Gryffindor like it's the main character house, it's the protagonist house. I think Gryffindor are jocks. That's how I see Gryffindor.
Yeah, interesting.
They, like Harry, spoilers, Harry becomes a cop, a magical cop when he graduates Hogwarts. Okay. So like that's what Gryffindor is.
And he's like the star player on the one sport team they have. But
they're jocks. Hufflepuff are the emotionally intelligent.
The thing. So you go to any store that makes Harry Potter merch based on like houses, and you buy the one that reflects the house you think you're in. Hufflepuff will always sell out first because everyone like of course Hufflepuff's gonna be the most popular because they like Harry Potter.
Because everyone's a pussy. I was a month ago I was standing in what's the fucking the train station called? King's Cross.
King's Cross, yeah.
I was standing in King's Cross staring at platform 9 3/4, which I'm
9
sure
3/4. Think you're being funny, do you?
Think you're being funny, do you? Reprises his role of the second film. I'm sure when they first installed 9 3/4, it was like this cute little trolley that's shoved into the wall, so it looks like someone's walking through a portal. Now it's like you have to line up in a zigzag, like cordoned off area, and there's this giant Harry Potter shop next to it. I didn't have any desire to get a photo myself, but you're supposed to line up, and then you get given the scarf of the house that you feel you belong to by like the person guarding it, and then you grab onto the trolley, and someone holds your scarf, so it looks like you're running through at full speed. I won't do this a lot, I promise. It was the most millennial shit I've ever seen. Like, it made me feel sick. And also, it's not really 9 3/4 because the layout of King's Cross is like, you go to the next section where platforms 10 to 12 are.
Yeah.
And so, like, there isn't like a 9 and it's not how it works.
Yeah. So the actual platform, I believe, was like between 3 and 4, and J.K. Rowling's just admitted she like forgot which one when she wrote it. So I went to King's Cross Station in 2002. So the first movie had come out, but the second one hadn't yet. And we grabbed our own trolleys, pushed them up against the wall, and made it look like we were. No, I don't think we had trolleys. We just like ran at the wall and like tried to make it look like we were going in, because you got a 9 3/4, or at least in 2002 anyway. It was essentially just like, you go to platforms 9 and 10, and it was just like one pole that had, like a T-shaped pole with 9 and 10 checking over. You had to go to platforms 3 and 4, I think, to actually get those sort of brick arches. And there was no line. There was. I mean, there might have been other people there, but we felt kind of embarrassed to be like, oh my god, we're doing the Harry Potter thing. How lame are we? And this was 20 years ago. And I've got photos of us running at the wall, and my sister like has her arms up and like really looks like she's just smacking into the wall. It's quite funny because this was also before any kind of like digital photography. So you take a photo, hope it worked out, and then you'll find out in a month when you get it printed. But yeah, we sort of did this stuff. But yeah, it's crazy to think now, because I just for some reason got a reminder. It was actually the pub quiz again yesterday. I got a reminder of like because it was a question about when did the Queen Mother die. And it was 2002 because I was in the UK at the time. My mum sent an unflattering postcard of the Queen Mother to her own mother, just like as a joke, being like, look at this, like, and while it was in transit, the Queen Mother died. So when it arrived, it was this really dark joke.
Incredible.
But yeah, and we're thinking like, fuck, that was like the first movie had only just come out when we were there. Yeah.
Yeah, and here we are, and its stench still lives on.
Yeah, but we should we could do a film franchise follow-ups where you talk about going to King's Cross Station, and I can talk about going to Harry Potter World at Universal Studios Japan.
Okay. I've probably said the whole story. I went up to the guy and asked, "Where's my train?" A couple of times.
And he said, "Think you're being funny, do you?
You think you're being funny, do you?
Where's my train? Think you're being funny."
Before we move on to the second film, is there a franchise? I feel the need to remind you because we seem to forget each time.
Yeah. Well,
is it necessary for this episode to ask why did this become a franchise?
I think we would have to say about the books, really. And what do you think it is about the first book?
What is appealing? I think it's escapism. I think it's wish fulfillment. I think that was always the thing that pulled me back into Harry Potter, was like being like, yeah, I wish I fucking could fly on a broomstick. I wish I could eat every flavor of beans, which my wish came true there because of the Jelly Belly every flavor beans brand.
The Jelly Belly soda, you heard.
Yeah, exactly. Never had
that before.
And so I'd say like the endurance of Harry Potter, I think, is a combination of wish fulfillment and then genuinely quite compelling, slightly too dark for its demographic storytelling, which is always, I think, the most attractive kind of storytelling. Yeah. When you, as a kid, when you feel like you're reading something that's a little bit too grown up for you. Yeah,
and I think that there is. I think they are reasonably well written in terms of especially like that, hitting that demographic of exactly what you said, where it's like, this is going to be a lot of people's first sort of introduction to slightly more advanced reading without being, so advanced that that's hard, but then also it's not so dumbed down that adults can't also enjoy it. It hits a very, and so, that's one nice thing I have to say.
I've got a question. Is Professor Quirrell the least famous actor to portray a main adult character in Harry Potter?
I think
Because
about that a
from
lot.
the second film onwards, all the, because there's at least a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher every year. They're always some kind of relatively heavyweight actor is brought in, starting from the film we're about to talk about. But like, who plays Quirrell, the main villain of the first film?
Ian Hart.
Some
is
guy,
his name.
Ian Hart.
He's got a pretty impressive resume, I'll be honest. But I wouldn't recognize him not as Quirrell.
No.
But
I looked up actually on Letterboxd who is the actor from Harry Potter that we've seen in the most film franchise Fortnights things. Would you like to take a guess of who it might be?
John Cleese.
It is John Cleese. He's sort of our most seen actor in the least prominent roles, because he's nearly Headless Nick in only the first two Harry Potters, and then he shows up as like random bit parts in so many other movies. But next, I think it's a tie between Robbie Coltrane, because he's in two Indiana Joneses and a James Bond, as well as these 8 movies. And then Tom Felton beats all the other kids, because he's Draco Malfoy in Harry Potter, but then he was also in
Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and he's in Get Him to the Greek.
Get Him to the Greek. So like, he also beat, like, I would say he's maybe the least famous of the I'd say Harry, Ron, and Hermione and their actors are more famous, but yeah, he's beaten them in terms of franchise.
Oh yeah, he also kind of grew, like, by the end of the franchise, I think grew up to be like the best actor.
I agree. No, he's got a lot more to chew.
He's such a little cunt in the first couple, though.
Totally. Yeah.
Like, just the fucking worst, eh? Like, it's so interesting in this first film how, like, all of Harry's like preconceived notions about all of these things are just like, he just meets some fucking dweeby redhead on the train, or like at the train station, is like, all right, I'm gonna base the next fucking 7 years of my life just on like what you are, and then how and then, because he's like, not Slytherin. It's like, all you know about it is this one kid is a Slytherin.
It does sound kind of gross, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like, obviously the fucking evil one.
They become friends on such a whim, and then because of that, like, this kid's life and his family are fraught with torment and loss, because they're involved with Harry Potter.
Yeah. Just before we move on, I will just point out as well that this was the second highest grossing film of all time at its release, and just in 2020 grossed over $1 billion, because it was re-released in several countries. And because it was like, just 900 fuck, I did have it, but it's gone now, so
Titanic?
No, well, Titanic was so Titanic was number 1. Yeah. But then I'm not sure what overtook it as second. Right, okay, sorry.
No.
Sorry, God. Okay, so
No, you did well.
So, now it's the second film. AJ, what's it called?
Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Oh, that is so funny. That is so funny, man.
Secretions?
Oh my God, you are on fire tonight.
Yeah.
I'm trying out Google Docs' like no page free view, but I don't like it, and I want my pages back. How do I turn off this? What's Chamber of Secrets about?
Chamber of Secrets is about they're back at Hogwarts, but some strange goings on are afoot, because students and some of the ghosts and a cat are suddenly paralyzed, as if they'd seen something very spooky. And there are these omens, like things written in blood on the wall, which refer to something called the Chamber of Secrets as being opened. And we come to find out that the Salazar Slytherin, the founder of Slytherin House, was, get this, a Nazi, a wizard Nazi. And because of that, he made a secret room in the castle that no one's ever found, called the Chamber of Secrets, where he houses a monster. There's something or other about being worthy. Oh, it's the pure blood. It's that Salazar Slytherin didn't believe you should be able to be a wizard if you have any Muggle blood in you. It's a direct metaphor for a few things. And we also find out that Harry's ability to speak to snakes, which was shown in the first film, but in a completely different way that really pisses me off.
Very silly way.
Is actually a sign that maybe he is the heir to Slytherin himself. But Harry soon finds out that the strange diary that talks to him from one Tom Riddle from 50 years prior, Tom Riddle grew up to be Voldemort. And who's been taken? Oh no, it's Ginny. I hope this all makes sense. There's Kenneth Branagh is in this film as the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. And who else is it? Is there anyone else big introduced in this one? Dobby, played by Toby Jones.
Yeah, who's based off of Vladimir Putin.
Really?
Yeah, the design of the character is based off Vladimir Putin.
He doesn't look like Vladimir Putin.
Well, I'm sorry if you're a Putin sympathizer, but I...
Whatever. Yeah, I mean, you've seen it. You've all seen it. You've all read it. That's what it's about. Chris Columbus again. Sorry, I can see you're still trying to get your pages.
I am. Okay, wait, I think I found page set up. Woo! Okay. Okay, now I'm ready to podcast.
Okay. Yeah, Chris Columbus.
Yeah, Chris Columbus again. And yeah, that's what it's about. It was Chris Columbus didn't end up returning for the third film because he realized he was going to miss his kids growing up if he continued with the franchise, and instead have watch these other kids grow up. But we also, Gilderoy Lockhart, you mentioned, played by Kenneth Branagh, who was also then approached to direct the third film as well, because he's also quite an accomplished director. But I think he probably would have made an alright film at this point.
I don't know if Prisoner of Azkaban's his movie, though.
True. He could have probably done one of the first two.
Or like Order of the Phoenix. I would have given him Order of the Phoenix, I think.
Yeah, he was... The character of Gilderoy Lockhart was apparently offered to Hugh Grant, who had to pull out at the last second because of 2 weeks' notice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did he give 2 weeks' notice?
Yeah, very good, yeah.
2 weeks' notice instead of Harry fucking Potter.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I think it was
bad.
like it wasn't like he made his choice. It was like you're contractually obligated to this, and it got pushed, so now you can't do that kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, and here's a piece of dumb IMDb trivia that's also a fun piece of casting. In his appearance on 8 out of 10 Cats, Alan Cumming revealed that he had been offered to audition for the role of Gilderoy Lockhart in this movie, but when he learned from his agent how much more money Rupert Everett was being paid for a screen test,
that just stops.
Yeah. And there's a full stop as well. It's not like they hit enter too early.
Or maybe it's only missing one word, like pulled out.
Yeah, well, that's 2. You fucking idiot.
Yeah. Retracted. What does this one have on Rotten Tomatoes?
What would you guess? First one at 81.
81, I would guess probably pretty similar. 80, 82? 83?
83? It is 83. Yeah, nice. I pointed upwards for AJ to give that. It was a very, very visual kind of thing.
Is it? So it's considered 2 points better than the first one?
Yeah. But like roughly,
what do you think of that?
Enough, like I think that's enough of a margin of error that you can say they're considered on par.
Yeah. I've got some perhaps unique opinions about Chamber of Secrets.
I doubt.
I doubt with the thousands of fans that Harry Potter has that you could have any unique opinions on it. When I reread these when I was 20, I thought the first one was a kid's book. I was like, this isn't very entertaining.
Well, I'm 20 now. This is...
I'm 20? This is too young.
Excuse me, Joanne. I'm actually 20.
Yeah. Then I read this one and I thought it was impeccable.
This is too adult for me.
This is too adult for me. Take it back, Joanne. No, I thought it was incredible. I thought and I'd love to talk about some of the stuff around how it's sequels, because that feels important to our franchise podcast, because that was what I really liked about it. Look at the series as a whole, I would say. And I feel like Prisoner of Azkaban gets a lot more praise in this area. I think this is the best standalone Harry Potter story.
That's bullshit. That's fucking
I
bullshit.
I think that the films get better, like the actual films as a whole get better, and I think that if you're into the ongoing lore, I would say probably Order of the Phoenix is where I think it
You
reaches.
love Order of the Phoenix, man. You won't fucking shut up about
it. Order of the Phoenix is the best one for the ongoing story. Chamber of Secrets is the best one that's just about a thing that doesn't really come up again.
I don't even remember which one Order of the Phoenix is. I got reminded today that Umbridge is in it.
Okay, well, I'm talking more about the books than the films, to be honest.
Oh,
but,
you fucking Hufflepuff. All right.
So stupid. I think some things I really like about Chamber of Secrets, a movie which is still probably like 3 stars and too long. And yeah, I'm not jazzed about the movie, but I really like I think the most attractive thing about it to me is the crisis it thrusts upon Harry, wondering, am I actually another Slytherin? Like, am I thought I was Gryffindor, but I kind of got in under dubious means. And the Sorting Hat was telling me that that I could be a great Slytherin. Am I Slytherin? And the whole talking to the parcel tongue, talking to snakes thing, which Ron calls parcel mouth in one scene. And I'm like, you got the fucking line wrong, Rupert. Do it again. Yeah,
so Harry having that sort of thing about is the way I was born different from the way I identify?
Yeah, exactly. And J.K. Rowling gives us a precise fucking no. Well, no, actually.
No, it's what you identify as.
Yeah, it's what you identify. I always thought that the best line J.K. Rowling's ever written is at the end of Chamber of Secrets, where Dumbledore says, "It is our actions, or it is our choices that define who we are, not." Yada yada yada. That's verbatim from the book. Like, I just think that's such a sweet idea, and I've thought about that a lot. That and it's the same as Batman Begins. It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me. It's essentially saying the same thing. That you as a person are defined by your actions, not maybe like the dark secrets or thoughts that you have. The chambers of dark secrets, perhaps, in your brain, the brain chambers. I always thought
Harry Potter, the Chamber of Brains.
I always thought that was easily Harry's most interesting conflict. I think the fact that he's like 12 plays into it as well, because it's quite a young, it's a lower stakes conflict.
Yeah, he might have had to go on Gryffindor blockers.
What are you talking about?
Like puberty blockers.
Oh, right. I always thought this is such a good example of Chekhov's guns, because so many things are set up and without you even realizing they're being set up.
I actually think, to be fair, I think a lot of these movies, and I presume the books, do Chekhov's guns really well. There's like 3 and 4 especially, there's a lot of stuff in there where you're like, no, I should have worked that out.
I love the fact Harry can hear the basilisk, and halfway through you're like, because it's a snake. You've established he can talk to snakes. Why can Harry hear a voice? Because he can talk to snakes. I think that's awesome. Right? That's really good. That's storytelling blocks that you're putting together and you're figuring out. And I really love that. I love the Tom Riddle stuff is so endlessly fascinating to me. I love that Hagrid is relatively crucial to the plot as well, because they think he opened the Chamber of Secrets back in the 50s or whenever. And as I said at the start, my favourite line in this movie is when they're like, "Oh, we're sorry, Hagrid, we've got to take you away." And he goes, "Take me where?" "No, Azkaban prison." And it's so funny to me, because it's like Robbie Coltrane got the direction, you're not scared, you're just like, what the fuck? That's his reaction to that. It's that's an insane overreaction to what the thing I've done. And I really enjoy that delivery. I love a lot of the imagery and the
insane overreactions. We meet Lucius Malfoy in this film, played by Jason Isaacs. That's Draco's father. And at the end of one of their last sort of interactions, he goes to, just in the middle of school with everything around, he goes to fire a spell at Harry and goes, "Avada!" and then it gets cut off. And it's like... So, Avada Kedavra is the killing curse. It's the most evil
Illegal.
thing you can do, and it's like you know, like it's literally like the forbidden curse. It's the killing curse. It just kills the person you fire it at. Only one person ever survived it, and that was Harry Potter. And he was just going to do this in the middle of a school. It's like, and we're surrounded by everyone. But the thing is, though, so the reason for that is that the book and the script don't specify what the spell is that he's casting. It's just supposed to be like a generic sort of like, you know, curse or just a firing back. And because Avada Kedavra isn't introduced until Goblet of Fire, the fourth book / movie, and Jason Isaacs had just been reading the fourth one at that time, and it was the first one that came to his mind. So he just went Avada, and then, but it's now this like insane thing in the film.
Let's headcanon this. I think that Avada is a prefix to a lot of spells.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like this is a category of spell. Like maybe it's to do with attacking or malice, you know?
Yeah.
And so maybe it was going to say like Avada Levasa.
Yeah.
Just making shit up.
Or like Avada
Like maybe that's
Rigorta.
it. Yeah, Rigorta.
Because like Cadavra sounds like cadaver, and I thought maybe it was just going to give him rigor mortis.
Ah, right. Yeah.
But yeah,
nice.
You mentioned there all the stuff with Tom Riddle being great. Is this explained in the book? I tried to ask Jess this, who's a bit of a Harry Potter expert, but
She will know the answer. I won't know the answer if she doesn't.
although talking this week, she did say that she's really more of a Doctor Who kind of gal than a Harry Potter one. But
Controversy-free Doctor Who.
did Tom Marvolo Riddle, when deciding what he was going to be known as the Dark Lord, he wrote his name out and went, okay, well, I'll take out the I, A, and M.
I love that you're asking this.
As
This is so funny to me.
I am, and then he's like, well, I'll be a lord, so I'll take, and then just he had these random letters left over, and then is that how he came up with the name Voldemort? Because it has to be, right?
Right? This is the worst part of Chamber of Secrets. The fact that Tom Marvolo Riddle is an anagram for I am Lord Voldemort.
I remember reading that in the book and then being excited. Like, I went to the cinema only excited to watch that scene because I loved it in the book.
Right.
That he did. But yeah, it is like watching it now. I'm like, when did you happen to choose the name Voldemort, which is actually supposed to be pronounced with a silent T, fun fact. But and then you just happen to work that out, or did you love the name Lord Voldemort and you came up with Tom Marvolo Riddle independently?
In real life, Rowling would have come up with Voldemort first, and then reverse engineered like, well, if his name's Tom Riddle, that means I would need because what I think is so stupid about this, one, it's I think one of the most troubling. I was gonna say one of the most troubling aspects of J.K. Rowling, but no, it's actually doesn't mean shit in the grand scheme of things. I think and you'll see this a lot. I think she relies on unnecessary plot twists and like surprise change of allegiances. This character was actually evil, or this character is actually this character. That sort of thing happens too much, and I think this is a cousin of that problem, which is that like it doesn't need to be an anagram for anything. Like Tom Riddle can just be his name, because the thing is, it's not like Tom Riddle is an anagram for Voldemort. In that anagram are the words I am, and I'd even say Lord is relatively unnecessary if you're going to like construct this whole thing. And I think it's so funny because it means like you could make like if you typed in I am Lord into like an anagram finder, like all these other things you could make it say, you know, like Tom Marvolo Riddle could also stand for this, and it's so unnecessary. And like if it was just, as I say, if it was just Voldemort or even Lord Voldemort, I'd be like, oh, that's cool, fine, that works. But the fact it's got these two unnecessary words, it's just so cheesy.
So I have I am in my name, so I'm gonna type in my name to an anagram solver. Richard Martin.
And Marvolo? What the fuck is Marvolo? You just fucking made that up. I mean, the whole thing's made up, I guess. I guess it doesn't sound any better or worse than any other made-up name in the series.
Yeah, I can't be bothered working it. you can spell hadn't.
Hadn't Voldemort.
But so there is one interesting thing though, because in various dubs of this, they still wanted to make it work.
Yeah.
And this is something normally you do, where you are forced to just pronounce words that you have no business pronouncing. But so I've got a bunch of different languages here. So in Spanish, his name is Tom Sorvolo Riddle, Riddle spelled with a Y, which transforms into Soy Lord Voldemort. In French, his name is Tom Elvi Gisudeur, which becomes Je suis Voldemort. In Italian, his name is Tom Ovolison Riddle, which makes up Son io Lord Voldemort. In German, his name is Tom Volost Riddle, which makes up Ist the Lord Voldemort. In Dutch, it's Martin Asmodom Villigen, which is an anagram for Mijin Naam is Voldemort. In Turkish, his name is Tom Malvoldo Riddle, which makes up Adim Lord Voldemort. In Brazilian Portuguese, it's Tom Servolo Riddle, which is East Lord Voldemort. In Swedish, his name is Tom Gus Mervolo Dolder.
Gus.
Which is Ego Sum Lord Voldemort, which is actually Latin. In Danish, his name is Romeo G. Detlev Jr.
They get worse, don't they? Like you're running out of it sounding organic.
Which makes up Jig Voldemort, or Yig Voldemort. In Icelandic, his name is Trevor Deljom, which is Ergel Voldemort.
Do you know what is really the problem?
Romeo G. Detlev Jr. is fucking sick. I feel like I've heard that name somewhere else.
What's really the problem here, I think, is not that his name is an anagram for I am Lord Voldemort. It's that you're told it in the text. If you find out his name is Tom Riddle, and then incidentally you find out his middle name is Marvolo, and then you just find out he's Voldemort, other people will find the anagram. It's because she wants to signpost how bloody clever she is that she has to put it in the text. And I think it weakens what I would otherwise consider one of the better stories in the series. But it's just one moment. But yeah. This movie has my favorite Daniel Radcliffe delivery of a line in it, and I'm gonna impersonate it for you now. It's when he's just found Filch's cat is paralyzed, and he goes, Filch is like, "You've killed my cat," because that's how Filch talks. Very hard tease. And Daniel Radcliffe turns around, and you can tell it's like constricting his throat the way he's turning around, and he goes, "No, Mr. Filch, you don't understand." and because you're used to his voice, you don't hear it that way first.
Here comes
but if you play
the Luigi voice again.
Yeah, kind of. In isolation, he sounds crazy speaking like that.
I have to find the scene.
Oh, sorry. Is it not the cat? It's the kid. It's not when he's killed the cat. It's when he's found a kid.
Who's the kid they find again?
Just, if you look up, like, "No, Mr. Filch, you don't understand," I think you might find it. Okay, I've typed in "No, Mr. Filch," and YouTube has finished it for me. Okay, it's when he finds... it's just some other kid. I don't know which kid that is.
Oh, it's the one that looks through the ghost.
Yeah.
Caught in the act. I'll have you out this time, Potter. Mark my words.
No, Mr. Filch, you don't understand.
I'm doing it for the whole line, where it's really just the end when he says "don't understand." That it sounds so funny. Understand? You don't understand. The British accent, baby. It's so funny.
Yeah.
What are some things that you like or don't like? Other
Big
things
spider.
other than the big spider. You're not a big fan.
What? Okay,
Aragog?
So going to the movies in 2002 as an arachnophobe, you've got fucking Aragog in Chamber of Secrets, you got Shelob in Two Towers, and you've got fucking Eight-Legged Freaks came out the same year.
the three greatest films of the early 2000s. As well.
But it was like I remember like dreading going to the cinema because they had these giant 8-legged freaks like standees, and then I was like, oh well, I'll just head along to Chamber of Secrets, shall I? And it terrified me.
The book.
And then head along to fucking Two Towers, and then I do actually remember because I mean I knew it was coming because I had read Chamber of Secrets, but then. You get going to the Two Towers and be like, there's another giant spider scene. What are the chances?
Well, do you agree with me or do you disagree with me of my praise for this as this feels like this feels so much more serious than the first one. Like it feels like
absolutely,
there's a lot more
it's
planning going forward.
It makes me fascinated, the idea of Chris Columbus doing the whole series and like maintaining this tone because like you say, this one is still darker while still being quite colourful in other parts, but yeah. I'm a big fan of Kenneth Branagh in this film.
Yeah.
It's good fun. I do kind of wish Hugh Grant had played the character, but I also just love Kenneth Branagh's performance, so it's like little column B. If you were to recast the role now, who would you pick? I saw someone suggest Rhys Darby.
Oh yeah, no, totally. That's who you'd go for. Oh god, Rhys Darby would so be in one of these if they were coming out now, wouldn't he?
Welcome to Hogwarts!
Or would he just be playing Gilderoy Lockhart, maybe? Maybe that's all I'm thinking of. Rhys Darby's a great call.
Richard E. Grant.
Oh. Yeah.
It's surprising that he's not in this film.
Is he handsome enough? Is he or handsome in the right way?
Dan Stevens.
Yeah.
Dan Stevens would have so much fun with that role.
He would be a great Lockhart, especially if he's playing it like his character in Eurovision, but English instead.
Yeah.
I think that's a great call. Yeah. Good call.
I just fucking off the top of my dome. The Rhys Darby one was someone else, but as well, also interesting, worth pointing out that just maybe reminded me of it, that this is our second franchise this year which Sean Connery turned down a role because he didn't understand the script, and then after turning down Dumbledore and Morpheus in The Matrix, and also what's his face Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, he was like, I'm just going to take the next script I don't understand because clearly I don't have an eye for these things. And he signed it to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He hated it so much he quit acting and then died. Speaking of actors dying,
sorry, I was just going to say, I think that Sean Connery is has this weird, at this time, had this weird grip on Hollywood as being like the guy you cast in the important old man role. But it's like, what is he famous for, guys? What's his most famous role? It's not this, Dumbledore is this sweet, kindly, wise old man. Gandalf's a little hornier, I guess, but Dumbledore is supposed to be this bastion of love and wisdom, and I just don't think that Sean Connery would
Harry Potter
bring that to. And I think Richard Harris is great as Dumbledore. I think he brings that kindness to it, and this is our second franchise in a row where the hottest actor is recast after partway through the series after Roderick was recast in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, although the original Roderick didn't die. I presume is where we're going next.
Yeah, so Richard Harris died not long after it came out, and I remember seeing the VO on the news. That's what we call them in the industry when the reader does a voiceover with some pictures instead of a track. That he'd been recast, or he was going to have to be recast. But yeah, it's during post production, producer David Heyman went to visit Richard Harris in the hospital. Though he was very weak from his illness, Harris insisted that the role of Dumbledore not be recast. Sadly, Harris died shortly before production was to begin on the next movie, necessitating a recast. And it's I wonder if he his dying wish was just don't use the character anymore.
Wow.
Because I'm so synonymous with it. But yeah, it's funny talking about the
there is a dark comedy to that you're going to see this sweet old man who's really transformed the two films you made, and he's just my last wish, don't fucking recast me. And you're that's actually what I'm here to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Don't do it. I don't want you to. Don't use the character anymore.
But and Surya McAllen turned down the role of Dumbledore. saying that he, having appeared as Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings, he said it'd be enough. It's had enough trouble living up to one legend. Two would be too much to hope for. And he also said that it would be inappropriate to take Richard Harris's role because Richard Harris had once called McKellen a dreadful actor.
I think that it pisses me off that Ian McKellen was in running. Like, you can't do that. You can't have Gandalf play Dumbledore. I think that would be so distracting if they went with that. I think that's insane that they actually got far enough for him to decline the part.
Yeah,
that's insane to me.
Yeah, but alas, yeah. Then Michael Gambon ended up taking the role. Yeah.
Unambiguously the two most famous wizards in fiction. Yeah, maybe Merlin.
Well, Harry Potter.
Chuck Merlin. Well, okay, old man wizard, like
with big
pointy
white
hat,
beards,
old man wizard. Yeah.
But yeah, Michael Gambon ended up taking the role of Prisoner of Azkaban, which we'll talk about in just a second. I just have one more piece of dumb IMDb trivia I want to get through. But yeah, Michael Gambon refused to read the books his whole tenure as Dumbledore.
Well, it shows. Sure.
But yeah, he said that every character is just pretty much himself anyway, so he didn't bother to read the books.
What an uninspiring thing to say when you're taking like such an important role in like an ongoing series.
But even just for an actor to say, I just play myself anyway. So, let's piece of dumb IMDb trivia for Chamber of Secrets. A rather stealthy shout-out to Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. The scene where Ron tries to warn Harry about the surrounding spiders mirrors the same scene where Marv tries to warn Harry about the pigeons preparing to attack them. Bonus points for not only having both characters say the name Harry in a similar nervous tone, as well as both movies being sequels to their respective firsts, and finally, all 4 movies being directed by Chris Columbus.
Very cool.
Bonus points.
I'm glad they won those bonus points.
Yeah. So yeah, next one was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which came in 2004 and was directed by Alfonso Cuarón, who you might think is too good for this franchise. What do you think it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
I'm going to say 96.
Oh, it's just 90. 96 is the highest of the franchise, though, and that is for Deathly Hallows Part 2. But this is the second highest, I believe. But, interestingly, it was the lowest grossing of the franchise.
That is really interesting. What the fuck?
Yeah. It's the only one to make under 800 million.
That's insane that these didn't just continue chalking up money with each sequel.
What's Prisoner of Azkaban about?
So the Wizarding world is on high alert because serial killer or something or other, or traitor to the Ministry, Sirius Black has escaped from Azkaban prison, and everyone's worried because they believe that he is the one that sold out Harry Potter's parents to Voldemort, and Harry's on high alert as well until he finds out that Sirius Black, he finds out that he's his godfather, but he also finds out that Sirius Black is actually innocent of the crime of which he's been convicted, and the real person who betrayed James and Lily Potter is Peter Pettigrew, who is another one of their friends who has been disguised as Ron's rat. He's an animagus, disguised as Ron's rat Scabbers for the series up till this point. Very made to be annoying for people like us who are describing each film and then be like, so there's been this rat this whole time. It's like, This one is all about, there's a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, Professor Lupin, played by David Thewlis, who is also, he's a werewolf, and Black is a animagus for a wolf, confusingly.
Yeah.
Is that right?
A black dog.
A black dog. And
Depression.
the main conflict is sort of around...
And also, since you got that far, it's also worth mentioning that they were a group of 4 friends with James Potter, who was also an animagus for a stag.
No, he wasn't an animagus. It's his Patronus. No,
he was an animagus.
Really?
Yeah, so Pettigrew, Potter, and Black learned to become animaguses to sympathize with Lupin, who couldn't control his transformation because werewolves don't pose a threat to other animals, only to humans. And so it was like, hey, we can all do this.
Oh, God, give me a book
and
about
so they
that.
did. And so they did it, and so they also, so that's why the Marauders map is pads.
Padfoot, yeah, I remembered that part. I just thought he was
Padfoot, Mooney, Wormtail, and Prongs.
I thought he was Prongs because it was just his Patronus, which is of course the big thing that if having a house at Hogwarts wasn't enough, what's your fucking Patronus? What's your animal? Kids born between 1985 and 2000. So
what's yours?
I don't know. Probably a rabbit. I think I've always had an affinity for rabbits. Well, it's essentially what's your spirit animal, which is not something Harry Potter would own as its, as a question.
Yeah.
But there's time travel in this one. They go back in time to save Buckbeak, who is a hippogriff, not a griffin. It's not a griffin, AJ, when you were 7 and your brother brought home the book from the library. And yeah, it's a lot of it is mainly about like Harry growing as a wizard, and a lot more maturity is introduced in this one. And yeah, I'd say that this is widely regarded as being the best one. It's either this one or one of the Deathly Hallows, I think people think is usually the best.
Yeah, I'd say anecdotally this and 4.
Right.
And Goblet of Fire. But personally, if you're asking me, this one is so fucking good.
It's the best directing in the series, for sure.
It's so good. Like, I think this movie's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I love this movie.
Oh, no.
And I, to a slightly lesser extent, feel the same way about Goblet of Fire. So I'm actually quite excited to rewatch the last 4 to see if... Because, like, even though I was the one that said, can we split this because I don't have enough time, as soon as I watched the 4th one, I was like, I want to watch the 5th one.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Like, I got into it. But yeah, this one is just like, David Thewlis, Lupin is just such a great character. Sirius Black is such a great character, like, more so in the sequels, but he and his other appearances. But yeah, just like everything about this film just comes together, and Alfonso Cuarón is just like, he's better than this film, like, one of the best living directors, and it needed that sort of shot. He was the one that got them just not always wearing their robes, which would have got them boring if we just saw them there all the time. And yeah, I think under the direction of a better director, the performances get better, and just this like slightly darker tone while still being somewhat kid friendly. I just think it's an incredible film, and the way the time travel, the time travel thing gets a lot of flack sometimes, but it's a very specific type of time travel where it's like a certain type of paradox where it's like you've always time traveled, so
Lost rules.
Harry gets hit in the head with something and you come back, and I think it's the bootstrap paradox. And you go back in time and you throw the thing. It's like, there's like a fire paradox or something like that, where it's like you go back in time to find out what started a fire, and you inadvertently caused the fire, trying to find it out, and it's like it was always you. But and it's kind of like it's paradoxical, but it makes this nice little loop, and the way everything. And then everything comes around, and then when he fucking like, because Harry's. The Dementors are, sucking Sirius's soul out of him and starting to, to do the same to Harry. But Harry is saved by this stag Patronus, and he's watching the scene happen later on, and is like, no, my dad's coming. I know it. And then it's like, Harry, like, your dad's dead. He's not coming. And then he does.
Yeah.
It gets like, he's Expecto Patronum. He's never been able to like conjure a Patronus before, but like, it's such a fucking good moment. And like, just watching this movie, I like watching the first time, I was like, oh yeah, these actually like don't really hold up. And I remember Azkaban being my favorite, so I wonder if it will hold up. And then watching it, I was like, fuck yes, man. Like, it's so good.
I think that the stuff with the Patronus and that it's probably one of the more iconic, like, powerful moments of the series of him yelling Expecto Patronus. I will say, like, if I was Harry Potter, I reckon I would have worked out it was gonna be me way before he does.
You like one of those things that always frustrates me, is people taking too long to work things out. That like they're like, oh yeah, and you realize that you're there to make everything happen that you've already seen, which Hermione should know, obviously, but
I like
it's-
that this is the one that sort of starts building the budding love, the budding romance between Ron and Hermione. Something which J.K. Rowling has since said, I don't think they would stay together forever. Just devastating. I don't know why you would comment on that, but I mean, not the worst thing she's done. And there's a shot of this that I think is so funny when they watch what they think is Buckbeak's execution from afar, and you see the executioner swing his axe, and you later find out he's just chopping a pumpkin, but they think before they've gone back in time that it's that he's killing Buckbeak, and Hermione is in the middle of Harry and Ron watching it happen, and she turns and Ron like cradles her in his arms, and then a second later Harry turns and like does like a third wheel hug toward them, and I find it pretty funny. I don't know if it's supposed to be, but it's like Harry just hasn't realized yet that that there's something going on there.
Yeah, there's a moment in the at the end of the second film where the script called for Hermione to hug both of them, but Emma Watson was so embarrassed about the idea of hugging two boys in front of the whole cast and crew that she just hugged Harry and then talked to the director and got it to be that she goes to hug Ron and they just feel awkward and do a handshake, and it ended up being again one of these things that's like sort of teases the budding romance that it's like they're still working things out. Yeah, that's funny, but it's so funny, the idea of like, oh my god, I can't hug two boys in front of everyone.
Yeah, what are some other moments?
Yeah, just Lupin is such a great character, like the ultimate teacher. What I want to ask you though is, what would a boggart look like to you?
Yeah, good question. So the boggart in these films is specified as being, no one knows what a boggart really looks like because it'll only ever appear to you as your greatest fear.
The thing you fear the most.
And in a class that's cut short, we see what a few characters' greatest fears are. I would, if I was a teacher, I would not. That's such a wild thing to be like, and it'll appear as your greatest fear, and it's like, well, yeah, some of them are gonna be fucking spiders or Professor Snape as Neville's is, but like, what are you doing putting Harry Potter in front of this kid? Has seen some fucking shit, Lupin. What are you doing? But my boggart would maybe be falling, whatever that would look like conceptually.
And then what if you were to use ridiculous on it? What would it look like?
It would turn into flying. That's not very funny, though, is it?
Or no, or turn into, you'd fall into a trampoline or something.
Or a big bowl of jelly.
Yeah, I think mine would look like a moth, like just the idea of a giant moth.
No, like Mothra
or a spider. Oh. Yeah, it would look like, and then ridiculous, it would just turn into two lava because they're fucking stupid.
That's a reference to Godzilla. Richard doesn't specifically think lava as an animal is particularly stupid, I don't think.
But yeah, there's that great, it's a good moment when he protects Harry from it and the boggart turns into a full moon, he turns into a balloon. But yeah, I think as well that when we first meet Lupin, he's sleeping on the train. That it's like we're shown somehow that it was like the way the moon is means it was a full moon the night earlier, so that's why he's so tired, because he was out werewolfing all night.
I never knew that.
And then there's a bit as well that when the Dementors arrive and they look, Harry looks out the train, and I think it's actually Ron looking at the train, and the window freezes over, and Alfonso Cuarón, who's a Mexican director, was talking to, imagine if that was not relevant to the story. Just like so he was talking about this scene, and he said that he wanted the rain to turn into ice when did it, and so the storyboard artists and production design team were like, okay, and they drew up storyboards of the rain turning into eyeballs because they thought he said eyes.
Turn it into ice.
Yeah, and then he corrected them. But.
Wow. And as well as David Thewlis as Lupin, another, I think, incredible casting call is bloody Timothy Spall as Peter Pettigrew.
So good.
A man the first movie I remember seeing Timothy Spall, and it defined his career for the next probably 15 years playing characters who are rat-like.
Yeah.
Because
He's so good in that, yeah.
He's so good in this, and like he looks like a rat. And he's just so desperate and conniving, and I think he's such a asset for the series going forward. I really like Peter Pettigrew. I love the name as well, and I think we're talking about like the stuff that I loved about Chamber of Secrets. The moment I love in Prisoner of Azkaban is so Harry gets this map we've talked about where he can see everyone's name walking around Hogwarts, and that's how he knows where they are. And he's sneaking about the castle in his invisible cloak, and he sees Peter Pettigrew running along the floor, and he knows that he's dead. And he's like, "Well, who is it?" And you are like, "I don't know what the hell's going on." It's such a great.
No, Harry doesn't know that Peter Pettigrew is dead at that point. Oh no, he does. Yeah.
He does, because he says, "I know him to be dead." But it's just such a great little mystery set up, and the answer to that mystery is so satisfying. To be like, "Oh, it's because he was a rat, motherfucker!" Like it's because he's this rat that you've been.
He's a literal rat.
Yeah, exactly. We've also got Gary Oldman as Sirius Black, who is not in this franchise as much as I think I remembered him being, because he's barely in Goblet.
Yeah. And then he, spoiler, dies.
Are we spoiling what happens at the end? Like, I don't know, because I was going to mention a spoiler before, and I just subconsciously was like, no, I won't mention it, and then it doesn't matter, does it?
This franchise, I mean, we'll get to it when we get to Half-Blood Prince, but like this franchise has our generations. It was Earth all along, like. That the idea of a spoiler, like the Luke I'm your no I'm your father, that it's like when you think of a spoiler and the idea, if you're trying to explain the concept of a spoiler to someone, there's a 3-word one you would use from this franchise, which we'll get to when we cover it.
I mean, the first word of those 3 words is Snape. And that is a character we've talked about surprisingly little for.
He'll get his day in the sun.
But he's pretty good in this. I think this is the first one where you actually have Harry and Ron and Hermione, mainly Harry, acting against him. Like Harry, what's it called? He what's that spell?
Expelliarmus.
Expelliarmus is him, I think, at one point. So there's I always was really interested in Snape as a character because of I mean, we will talk about him, I guess, because he gets
he gets
far more integral moment.
So Snape knows that Sirius knows of a secret entrance from the secret passageway between Hogwarts and the Shrieking Shack, and he doesn't think to close that at any point when they're locking down Hogwarts.
There's a lot of shit like that in the series, dude, and I'm going to be talking all about it in Goblet of Fire, I think.
Yeah, we're 2 hours in and we've still got AJ's big Goblet of Fire rant to go.
It's not going to be any bigger than any of my other rants on this episode.
It's not going to be any bigger than your fucking pub quiz story, Richard.
Yeah, at least mine's relevant. I like that Voldemort's not in this one. I like that we have this reprieve from the ongoing storyline. I think that's really cool.
Oh, Peter O'Toole was also Richard Harris's family. I said Peter O'Toole should play Dumbledore.
Yeah, what do you think of Michael? Have we talked about Michael Gambon as his actual?
Well, I guess again that'll come up more in Goblet of Fire.
Yeah,
when we have the famous Harry. Did you put your name?
Yeah, I mean he's all right in this. I don't have any real problems with him, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think one thing that the movies stopped doing. Here's the nicest thing I can say about the Chris Columbus movies is that they
they had Richard Harris on them.
They had Richard Harris on them. No, they are the only ones that feel like a school year.
Sure, yeah.
The remaining films feel like they are about something that doesn't necessarily take a year, whereas the first 2 feel like they are specifically framed by the year setup, which is very important in the books. I thought it was really interesting watching this, how the discovering the truth about Sirius Black to the end of the film is an unbroken, probably a day. You know, so probably half the film it takes place on one single day, and in the film,
one night.
Yeah, one night.
When and the moon was full that night.
And they go back in time as well. So
yeah, true. It's also interesting that the climax of Chamber of Secrets, Hermione's written out of it, and the climax of Azkaban, Ron's written out of it.
True, yeah. I think they're both written. I mean, they're kind of both written out of the climax of Philosopher's Stone and Goblet of Fire.
They like precedingly get there. Like it works better in the book because there's another trial, so it's like they each get to have their moment. But yeah, there's a couple of pieces of dumb IMDb trivia. One just like fun piece of behind the scenes trivia. So when Alfonso Cuarón took the role on as director, he wanted to see sort of how well these people understood their characters.
I thought about this all the way through watching the movie.
So he got them to the main trio to write essays about their characters, and Emma Watson wrote a 16-page long essay. Daniel Radcliffe wrote a 1-page essay, and Rupert Grint never turned his in.
Yeah, because Ron wouldn't
and it's
have
just
done
like that's so understanding your
to be
characters
Rupert
to
Grint
that.
to like get the easiest role the easiest character
Brilliant
of the whole cast, not just the main three, and the biggest one of the biggest franchises ever made. And then what's he done since? Not a lot. He's just rides around in his ice cream truck.
He's in Snatch.
Yes,
like the new TV show,
yeah.
But he also Thunderpants came out between the first and second movie.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's insane. Thunderpants
Rupert
with
Grint's-
67% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Rupert, that's not that much less than the first Harry Potter movie.
It's insane.
I wonder if him being in that boosted Thunderpants. Thunderpants, can someone suggest that for generic movie podcast? Because that feels like, I've never seen it, but that feels like a distinct type of generic movie podcast movie.
I mean, apparently it's quite good.
Well, better than how
to-
it looks, I think, is more what 67 demonstrates.
Yeah. So your dumb IMDb trivia. This movie has the highest number of real animal species in the franchise, including but not limited to a rat, a cat, a bat, a dog, a Highland cow, an owl, a crow, to name the most obvious.
The dog is a bit of a cheat, I think.
Why?
Because it's an animated dog. It's a.
Oh, right.
Do you like the Oh, sorry. You keep going.
No, do I like them?
Do you like the I think this may be the best Dursley scene of the series.
Oh, with Petunia, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, with Aunt Marge.
No, so Aunt Marge, yeah.
I think that's quite iconic, and I think the night bus is a very fun scene as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Timothy Spall plays a man who can transform into a rat. Spall provided the voice for the rat Nick in Chicken Run.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Is that wait? Is he one of the rats in Chicken Run? I love those characters. I never knew that was Timothy Spall. If anyone's still keeping up with Timothy Spall, he's like lost a lot of weight, and he stars in like 2 New Zealand films a year or so now. Like he's been in like multiple Kiwi films in the last like 5 or 6 years.
Do you want me to tell you who voices the other rat?
Yeah.
Phil Daniels.
Okay. Imagine if it was.
I don't know who that is.
Imagine if it was the guy who plays Quirrell or someone.
Yeah. Are you excited for Chicken Run: Dawn of the Nugget?
Yeah, dude. Is it Zachary Levi as replacing Mel Gibson as Rocky?
Yeah. And Tandaway Newton replacing Ginger.
Whoever
Ginger.
played Ginger.
Yeah.
And she's replacing Ginger, the character. It's just a plasticine version of Tandaway Newton.
David Bradley's going to be in it as well, who's Filch.
I love Filch. He's in Game of Thrones, where he essentially plays Filch, but in Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Ramesh Raghunathan and Daniel Mays are like all the main cast. Oh, Nick and Fletcher recast. It's not Timothy Spall, it's Ramesh Raghunathan now.
Damn.
Random. Yes. So, what do you reckon Now Playing Podcast gave this film?
Is this going to be a mainstay on Dumb IMDb Trivia? I reckon they gave it. What's their rating system again?
Recommend or not recommend.
I reckon they recommended it.
So 3 recommends?
Yeah.
That's right. So, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, 2005. I remember when the book came out, I thought it was the biggest fucking book I'd ever seen.
You could kill someone with that thing.
How did you feel when you first saw the book?
Yeah, it's pretty. I think I thought it was like as big as the Bible, a book I'd seen a lot of at that point in my life. But then when Order of the Phoenix came out, it was like books shouldn't be this big. When the length of a story outweighs how like practically big a book should be. But yeah, no, you're right. This one is big.
Where is this in the? Is this the longest one? No, second longest one.
Order of the Phoenix is the longest one, and then Half-Blood Prince is quite short, I think.
What, comparatively to the... Oh, yeah, so it's... Order of the Phoenix is 870 pages, Goblet of Fire is 734, Half-Blood Prince is 652, and Deathly Hallows is 759, so it's... Goblet of Fire is third longest.
Right.
Harry Potter the prequel is 4 pages long.
What's that?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's just like, you just got fucking Avada Kedavra and his mum stopped it. Oh, it's an unofficial, it's called James and Sirius prequel. You okay?
So, like, so casually talking about, like, massive plot machinations in the story. Oh, you just got Avada Kedavra and his mum fucking stopped it. Like, power true love. It's a boy who fucking lived or some shit.
J.K. So J.K. Rowling wrote 800-word prequel story, which was handwritten at a charity event and auctioned off. It was published online, and so it's set 3 years before the birth of Harry Potter, and it recounts an adventure held by Sirius Black and James Potter. She said, although I did feel like a bit of a relapsing addict as I sat down to write, the words poured from my pen with frightening ease. I am not working on a prequel. Indeed, I've written that clearly at the bottom of the card itself. I just thought this was the best way to make money for 2 extremely worthwhile charities.
Nice. What a good person.
It's almost 10:30. We're getting the sillies.
No, we can't. We've still got to talk about old Gobby F.
The Gobby of F. Someone, you know how when mature women get their hair done, it's called a blowout?
No.
Yeah, well, it is. But
also, I'm laughing because I didn't know that, and also because where the hell is this going?
Someone today commented, one of the senior people in our newsroom, on their blowy, unironically, and no one giggled.
Wow. You're, of course, bringing up blowies because potentially only in New Zealand a gobby is a colloquial term from like 2011 for a blowjob.
No, I think it's not only in New Zealand.
Okay, weigh in, Americans. They're like, we call it a sorcerer.
If someone says we like our philosophers, sorcerers, and our gobbies to be played by Willem Dafoe.
That's what makes me think that they don't know what it means because they put it in
fucking
Spider-Man.
But there's also that Spider-Man cartoon where she says like, "Oh, get your white stuff. Don't get your white stuff all over me."
Can we talk about Goblet of Fire, please?
You shouldn't have said gobby.
I'm sorry. It's my fault.
You'll be dancing for hours. What's it about?
What? Can you tell me?
It's directed by Mike Newell.
Who's that? What else has he done?
I've looked this up so many times.
Well,
it's
just so weird to do like Chris Columbus, Alfonso Cuarón, and then just some guy. Like, I don't know who this guy is.
Yeah, Mike Newell was looked at for the first one. 4 Weddings and a Funeral. And Donnie Brasco. But I've looked this up so many times.
They're by the same guy?
I have looked it up. Yeah.
Donnie Brasco in 4 Weddings and a Funeral and Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire are by the same guy.
And his most recent one was the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society. He also did Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time.
What a crazy career. Crazy career. Holy shit.
But yeah, and then David Yates was an even more insane choice.
But we'll get to him later on.
Yeah, we'll get to him, but his career is so stupid.
So if Prisoner of Azkaban had 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, I would guess this would exist somewhere in between the first 2 and the third. So let's go like 85.
88.
Yeah. Yep.
Very good. What's it about?
So there's sort of 2 plots happening at the same time. One of which I think is very good, and one of which I think is very stupid. So the title Goblet of Fire comes from the fact that Hogwarts is essentially hosting the Wizard Olympics, which is called the Tri-Wizard Tournament, where I don't know what the time frame is, how often it happens, but like Hogwarts is now housing some students from two other schools. One is the masculine boys' school,
Baxton's
and one
Durmstrang are the two schools.
Yeah, and one is the pretty lady school. One is
But
Bulgarian.
both schools are actually co-ed.
That's weird. That's not how it looks.
It's made clear in the book, apparently.
And there, so you throw your name in the Goblet of Fire, and it picks one champion from each school, and they compete in these 3 trials to win the Tri-Wizard Cup. And the Durmstrang selection is what's his name? Victor Crumb, who's the Quidditch world champion. Then the one from
who's a seeker as well.
And then the winner from what's it called?
Bo Baxton's
is
Bo Batons. Sorry.
Bo Baxton's.
There's an X. There is an X in it.
I know.
Bo has an X with an X, yeah.
Is Fleur
Delacour.
Delacour, and then Cedric Diggory, played by Twilight's own Robert Pattinson in his first major role.
Also a seeker.
He is the Hogwarts selection, and he's a Hufflepuff, probably the most significant Hufflepuff in the series. Cedric Diggory, and what happens to him? He fucking dies.
Because he's a pussy.
Because he's a pussy.
Defining character trait.
Yeah. But surprise, surprise, Harry's name also comes out, and because there's a contract I will talk about later, it means he also has to compete despite being underage. So the 3 challenges are: you have to steal a golden egg from a dragon, you have to save someone you like from the bottom of the Black Lake, and then lastly, you have to go through a maze to find the cup. But they find the cup, and Harry and Cedric grab it at the same time in a show of good faith, and it takes them to a graveyard where it turns out it's a portkey. It takes them to a graveyard where Peter Pettigrew holds a infant fetus of Voldemort, who looks like the "I remember when they first invented chocolate" character from SpongeBob. And they kill Cedric, and they use Harry's blood to make Voldemort rise again from the dead, and this is the culmination of this whole plot that's been going on since the start. That basically the rise of wizard Nazis is happening again, and it's all been culminating towards this,
just like in real life.
Yeah. And they get back to Hogwarts, and they discover that Mad-Eye Moody, played by Brendan Gleeson, the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, was actually Barty Crouch Jr., a Death Eater, which is what the Nazis are called, the followers of Voldemort. It was actually Barty Crouch Jr. Or Barty Crouch Jr. or Death Eaters?
Death Eaters.
It's all been this big plan to entrap Harry Potter so that they can bring back Voldemort. And with his blood, and he nearly kills Voldemort, but something about how powerful Harry is means he can't kill him, and he also talks to the ghosts of his parents, because when he duels Voldemort, I think this is talked about in the book, but not really in the movie, the souls of the last 4 people that Voldemort killed come out of his wand, and that includes Harry's parents, Cedric Diggory, and some old guy.
Now, I know you have a big issue with the idea of the Tri-Wizard Tournament. Would it help if... So you mentioned that being underage and stuff like that. So the last Tri-Wizard Tournament was held in 1792. And
what the fuck?
So the Tri-Wizard Tournament used to be a regular thing, and maybe even annual, I'm not sure. But it was discontinued because of how dangerous it was and the death toll of it. It was then revived in 1994 with the restriction that you had to be over 17 to try and stop as many deaths occurring.
And that's when Goblet of Fire is set.
Yeah, so that's when Goblet of Fire takes place.
Isn't that... We haven't talked about that. How Harry Potter as a series completely hides that it's set in the 90s. Like, it's never mentioned It's never, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
But yeah, it is like, because I know so it's not like an annual thing.
No, I knew that.
This happens every year. It's like,
Yeah. No, look,
So,
I feel conflicted about this because I think that all of the stuff about Voldemort, the ongoing story, I think is incredible in Goblet of Fire and Order of the Phoenix. I think Harry Potter's like ongoing storyline is the best in those two stories. But I said that Chamber of Secrets is like my favorite standalone plot of the series. Goblet of Fire is like easily my least favorite plot of the series. I just think it is ridiculous. No matter how many like I think it's ridiculous. No matter how many like caveats people give it to explain it, I think it is insane and frankly character assassination of Dumbledore, like at a time like forget it. Even if we don't talk about the fact that it's a contest where students are only allowed to compete for some reason and they fucking die, and even when they bring it back, one of them fucking dies.
Well, it would be pretty bad if they were up against teachers.
What I don't know what no, don't let students do it, I guess is what I'm saying. But the fact that they know that someone is trying to kill Harry Potter and then all of this suspicious stuff happens around, like someone put his name in the Goblet of Fire, and even though he's underage, he still has to do it. And I can't get past this bit. They're like, Professor McGonagall, Maggie Smith's character, speaks the only sense in the movie where she's like, he's just a boy. He's like, we're already on high alert. We had Dementors last year. We know that the Death Eaters want to kill this kid. We cannot put him in the Triwizard Tournament, especially after the like strange goings on that even got him nominated in the first place. And then Snape's all like,
and that there's a fourth person.
Yeah, there's not even supposed to be a fourth wizard.
It's called a Triwizard Tournament.
Yeah, and so like all of these suspicious things happen, but Dumbledore is like, nah, we have to do it. And Barty Crouch Sr. is like, it is a magical contract. We can't. And it's like, what does that fucking mean? What is a magical contract? With whom? With whom? Don't let him compete. No. Don't let him compete. Don't let him compete. It's so stupid. Why would you let him compete? This is such a bad, when I think of Dumbledore, I think of him as like a Santa Claus kind of like all-loving character. But this speaks to like, where the hell are his priorities? And it would be all good if like he had some kind of like plan that would work in Harry's favor. But what fucking happens at the end? Satan comes back, a kid dies, Harry nearly dies. Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work out for anyone. It just works to make the story worse, all because of an under-explained thing in the plot that like, it's a magical contract, sorry, you have to do it. It's so insane to me. I think it's so insane. And also, all of them, except maybe the first Dragon one, terrible spectator sports. You've got one, the Dragon one, there's a stadium, but also like how are the onlookers going to be protected from the dragons? And even then,
contracts.
they magical contracts. They fly out of the stadium, so they don't even see what happens. The second one,
it's implied that the other ones don't. Like, it's only because Harry conjures his
wand, his broomstick. Yeah,
broom. Yeah. But you're allowed a wand.
and then the second one takes place under the Black Lake, where everyone's just staring at the water, I guess, for the whole thing. And then the third one's in a maze, and no one sees what happens. Like, it's so stupid. I think it's so stupid. Yeah. And my other kind of big problem with this story is I have a problem with the fact that Brendan Gleeson is so good as Mad-Eye Moody, and then at the end of the film you find out it wasn't even him. It was Barty Crouch Jr. Drinking Polyjuice Potion, and the real Mad-Eye Moody is at the bottom of a pit and then is in the series going forward. Like, he comes back. But that one isn't the one, like, he never gets more play than he does in Goblet of Fire,
Yeah.
but that's not even him. And I think it's so interesting that they chose to go with Polyjuice Potion, when there's a scene at the start of this where fake Moody is teaching them about the 3 forbidden curses, and one of them is a curse that essentially allows you to control someone's bidding.
It's like mind control, yeah.
Mind control, and sort of a combination of mind control and like telekinesis, because he's doing it on a little crab thing. I just think that's what it should be. It should be the real Moody, and he's got the, what's it called? The Among Us curse. No, the Crucio is torture. Imperious curse. He's got the Imperious curse on him. Like, it should be Barty Crouch Jr. is controlling Moody from afar so that you can still have these moments of genuine bonding. We're actually Moody. He was just unknowingly also cursed. Like, it's so crazy that the whole character's just not supposed to be him.
Yeah, because also it's not like, I've established the rules of him. Like, Imperious is introduced in this one. So it's not like, because you could say that, you have to be pointing the wand at the victim, so that's why it couldn't have been that. But this is also the one where she invents that.
Yeah, it's made up. You can do whatever you want. It's literally magic. You can literally say a wizard did it to any plot holes.
Yeah. If she'd established Imperious in an earlier one, you could understand why. But it's like,
well, she did it. She did establish Polyjuice Potion, and going forward, like even in the Fantastic Beasts movie, the reveal that someone was someone else. It's so Rowleyan. It's so typical of the series, and it's used for plot twists way too many times, I think.
Rowley is like Rowleyan.
It's
like
a second Rowley
like
franchise.
Rowley from Diary of a Wimpy Kid, yeah. But the interesting thing about the Polyjuice Potion, the way we've shown it works, so Polyjuice Potion, also you drink it and you have like some DNA from a person and you transform into them, which introduces the whole plethora of problems in the wizarding world. Like, God, if you were to investigate like the culture around like sexual harassment at Hogwarts, it would be horrible, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
it's the 90s. We didn't investigate.
So it's the 90s, baby. But you have
well, they literally brew it in the girls' bathrooms, so like
yeah. So the way we're showing Polyjuice Potion works in Chamber of Secrets, when Ron and Harry become Crabbe and Goyle, who are Malfoy's followers, they still have their voices. They're being dubbed over by, and so it's like it not only, it's also the biggest roles for Crabbe and Goyle in the series, and they actually have no speaking lines in Chamber of Secrets because they're all dubbed over. But it means that Barty Crouch Jr. can do a real good Mad Eye Moody.
Yeah, I mean, how hard is it? Just a gruff voice. I think that's so silly. And all of this, I think, what frustrates me about Goblet of Fire is that all of this can be undone. All of my problems could be undone by like rewrites that keep what's good. Like the three tournaments can still, like, the games can work out another way in which Harry has to fight a dragon or go down. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be this bullshit Olympics that the worst time in Wizarding world history to bring them back. Like, it's so weird. Yeah. It's so weird.
Yeah, but the fact that it's like, let's lighten the mood after our whole Dementor thing last year. Just this horrific thing where people die. This thing you had to stop because people died.
I wrote on my Letterboxd review for this movie that it's the CTR of Harry Potter. And what I meant by that is like the Crash Team Racing, but also like when like a platformer or like an otherwise relatively serious platformer game or something, they suddenly do like a kart racer entry, but they still try to like inject important plot into, but it's like Fast and Furious, like all of these like world-ending plots they're trying to stop have to revolve around cars because that's what the series,
driving fast,
that's what the series was initially. And it's the same thing where it's like, clearly you, like, J.K. Rowling just really liked the idea of a tournament. And I get it. It is fun. I just don't think this is the appropriate place in the series to do it. If there is an appropriate place. Like, it's just so bananas to me.
Maybe save that for a Robert Galbraith novel.
I don't know. She's not very good at her games because, as I said before, Quidditch is maybe the worst device. Quidditch is 3 games that you play at the same time. It's so stupid.
Yeah, but a friend of the podcast, Carlisle, is actually like on a Quidditch team. It's been made into a real sport, and he plays it.
But he told us that they're trying to change the name because it's been removed so far from what the Harry Potter.
Well, it's a couple of things. It can never go professional because it's got a copyrighted name.
Yeah.
And then he said like most of the team is like trans or non-binary, and so there's obviously a lot of that. But it's interesting because it's like it's been this haven for people that love sport, but haven't. It didn't feel like they fit in with, especially where a lot of team sports are divided into boys and girls. That they've now got this sort of haven for that, and then it ends up being forever tied to this thing. But yeah, no, Goblet of Fire. For me, I gave Prisoner of Azkaban 5 stars because I love giving things 5 stars. I gave Goblet of Fire 4.5, and the one thing that brought it down is one of those things that I forget every time I watch it, is that there's this whole thing at the start for the first like half hour, 45 minutes, that Ron's just real mad at Harry, and then it just goes away. And it's just so annoying. Yeah. And you have the like, oh, can you tell Ron to tell me that this, and like, it's so stupid. But and then he just sort of gets over it because he's like, oh yeah, you almost fucking died, like doing this
extracurricular school activity that you were forced to do by the teachers, the like people you trust most in your life. He's better off with the Dursleys. They're not going to make him do anything like death-defying.
Yeah, they're just dicks.
I just think it's so silly. It's so silly, and it's frustrating because of how much I love. I nearly said like and went for love instead. I love everything else in this story. It's the Voldemort stuff is so like, it's like dripping with darkness. It's so fucking scary.
He's like, I can touch you now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so scary. It is. It's scary, and it's dark, and it's creepy, and it brings such wonderful stakes to the series going forward. But it's the at the end of this really silly setup, I think, and it just it's weird. It's an example of where someone has a cool idea, but they can't organically fit it into the story, I think. Any new characters we want to talk about? Any new cast or anything like that?
Yeah, no, we've got Brendan Gleeson, who fucking love.
Ralph Fiennes is Voldemort.
Oh,
pretty big deal.
Yeah, Ralph Fiennes finally comes in as Voldemort, but has a little bit to do here. But I want to raise a question with you that I raised while watching this, and now that you've rewatched the film, I'm keen to get your opinion on. Did Hermione lose her virginity to Victor Crumb?
Why do we have to talk about this?
So Victor Crumb has to be at least 17. He's probably 18, I would guess. And Hermione's 14 in this movie. And Victor Crumb takes her to the Yule Ball, which is a big thing in this. And then she's the person that like the because it has to be like a treasured loved one, it's like find the thing that you love that you've lost, and
this is for
it's
the second
for Victor
challenge
Crumb for the second challenge at the bottom of the Black Lake. For Victor Crumb, it's Hermione, which some girl you just randomly asked to the Yule Ball probably isn't going to get stuck at the bottom of a lake for that. And she describes their relationship as being more physical than, and so I'm like, they totally banged. I googled this and I to get different opinions on it that like on Quora or whatever it's called, the like the answers thing that when you Google one answer it emails you for fucking forever about it. But it's like, and there's a few people that are like, yeah, no, like they absolutely did. They were clearly together for quite a while and developed quite a deep relationship, and she does refer to it as physical. And then other people are like, no, she was 14. How could she have? And it's like, teenagers fuck. Like,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, yeah, whether or not it's the law, like people get horny.
I think the main thing that would stop me from thinking she lost her virginity to
is that she's saving herself for Ron.
No, not saving herself for Ron, but I feel like she's portrayed as quite a sensible character. It seems like quite a wild streak of a thing to do, but maybe that's part of the sexuality of it, I guess. Like, I think the better question is, did Ginny give Neville Longbottom a handy behind the the bike sheds behind the broom sheds after the Yule Ball, because he's shown to be on, like, he takes Ginny to the Yule Ball, and then he comes back to Gryffindor Commons late. And he's like, oh, me, I'm the one coming in late, which, implies that something else happened there.
Then he got a hand job. And then Ginny comes in with a real sore wrist.
Yeah, the sore wrist theory. Which is, of course, interesting because Ginny ends up with Harry as well. But in this movie, he is into someone named Cho Chang. And even when I was like, how old would I have been when this movie came out? Like, 13?
12,
13. Even then, I was like, it's a bit of a racist name to give the one Asian character in your, like, whole story.
And also, like, and because I remember when she was cast, there were people that were outcry that an Asian woman would be cast in this role, because I think a lot of young girls saw themselves in that role. And it's like, you could have, like, this character could have been called China Asia. Like, you couldn't have had a more on the nose name than Cho Chang.
Yeah. Which, just to clarify, we're criticizing J.K. Rowling for not
writing. Yeah, there's a few things like that in the because what's the one black Hogwarts student's name?
I'm not sure, but I know that it all just feels like a symptom of, like, what she would be known as between the book's ending and the turf stuff, was like someone who would, like, put real half-assed, like, plot retcons into her story.
Kingsley Shacklebolt is the black student.
And like I remember, like, someone asked her on Twitter, like, are there any Jewish wizards? And she replies with, like, someone or other Goldstein. And it's like, Jesus Christ, woman, like, put some fucking tact into what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then when Hermione was cast as a black woman in the Harry Potter and the Cursed Child stage play, she was like, hey, look, Hermione, I never said she wasn't black. And it's like, first of all, you actually described her as pale-faced in one of the books. And also, like, it's the whole Dumbledore is gay thing. It's like, put your fucking money where your fucking mouth is, and actually provide representation and realistic representation, instead of after the thing comes out trying to get points for saying that all of these things could have been more diverse than they actually were.
Yeah, Harry Potter and the credit I want for diversity I couldn't be bothered writing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I remember, like, years ago saying that I thought J.K. Rowling was the next George Lucas that's just, like, constantly adding to her universe when no one's asking her to.
Constantly still talking when no one's asking her to as well.
Yeah.
And throwing away all that goodwill. Although, like, do you reckon... How mainstream do you think is the revolt of J.K. Rowling? Because, like, I like to think my, like, TikTok For You page as an example of, like, a metric. I like to think it's pretty well cultivated to, like, my interests and what I want to talk about. I still get, like, Harry Potter stuff popping up, even though until we got Harry Potter for the podcast, I was actually actively trying to remove any Harry Potter stuff from my life. Not that there was a lot of it, but I was, like, unfollowing pages because I was like, I actually just don't want to be a part of Harry Potter at all anymore after J.K. Rowling. Now I'm sure the algorithm's going to be picking up that I fucking watched all the movies for some reason, and it's going to be like, oh, give him more. But, like, because, like, even a place like TikTok, which in some ways I would call progressive, in other ways, particularly with certain recent court cases, I would say is fucking stupid and blind to any kind of real social problems. Like,
you're talking about the O.J. Simpson case.
Yeah, the O.J. Simpson case from 30 years ago is what I'm talking about. No, like that stuff, like I would think that TikTok would be the front line of,
and also because it's very Gen
Z. Exactly. The front line of rejecting Harry Potter, and yet it's still there. And like I think I saw a TikTok of someone saying, like, is anybody else, like, if someone's into Harry Potter now, is that, like, a red flag for you?
It's an ick.
Yeah.
They call them icks now. Not red
well, no, there is a difference if you want to get into this. I think icks are often less rational. Is the thing I've heard. Yeah. If you go up to because, like, the picture of, like, a Harry Potter obsessed person, you know, we were, like, 2 life paths away from being one of these people probably in our own lives because it was so prevalent for our generation. Like, I wonder what percentage of them, and I'm not talking about boycotting because I think that's probably a bit too much to expect, but how many of them don't know and how many of them don't care?
Well, I've often used my friend Kate as a straw man for these kind of things.
Normie Kate.
Lovely girl. Like,
normies are great people most of the time. I'm the bastard. You're the normal one.
Yeah. God, how I
envy the normies.
But it's I think and like because there's other people at my work like this as well, and I've also sort of described like the type of person who Joker was their favorite movie of 2019. Like there's two different types of people who Joker was their favorite movie. One who's like the gamers rise up kind of person, and the other one's just like probably didn't really watch that many good movies that year, and that was the only kind of like Oscar caliber movie they watched, because it was the big one, grossed over $1 billion. But
it was the crossover between Oscar and superhero blockbuster.
Yeah. But that sort of kind of person who consumes a lot of media but doesn't really think about it, I think that's probably a good way to describe it. These people that consider themselves film buffs, TV buffs, but don't actually really look much deeper, don't bother having a 7-season podcast about it. I think those kind of people, I think that from just anecdotally from conversations I've had with these kind of people, that conversation like I have with people at work and things like that, it's like I think there is a movement to move away from Harry Potter, and especially like people that grew up with it. And I think it's maybe in the same sort of way that you saw with Twilight a little bit, but now Twilight's kind of come back around, where it's people are saying like, I've grown out of that. There'll always be a place for it in my heart, but I don't think about, or I don't like Harry Potter as much as I used to. And I think that's like it almost seems like a universal, like a global movement, which would have been sparked from this turning on J.K. Rowling. But it's like, it's less stuff is probably popping up in people's feeds, or there's more critical kind of stuff is popping up. And so I think even people that maybe don't know all the turf stuff or don't fully understand it are probably still seeing a little bit of this like move away from it. But
because I would say like I don't know the percentage of sort of actively transphobic people in our generation, because I feel like it would be, I would like to think it's not too many, but also I also feel like that type of person who is transphobic wouldn't have been into Harry Potter anyway. Like it's funny that talking at the start of the show about how Christian parents the world over tried to lead some kind of like uprising against these books, and it's like they are now the people that are sharing the beliefs of J.K. Rowling. It's the Legolas, Gimli, never thought I'd die fighting side by side with a friend meme, but it's like the Christian mums in the 90s and early 2000s are now the like that's who J.K. Rowling is now, I find it weird how similar she is to the like catty woman characters in her Harry Potter stories, like Rita Skeeter. She's so Rita Skeeter like,
She considers Rita Skeeter to be her like author insert.
Really? Yeah, that's hilarious. I think Petunia Dursley is a more accurate author insert. Or Umbridge.
Yeah. For the first film, she was offered to play the part of Harry's mum.
Oh, yuck.
But then she said she's not an actress and she just messed it up somehow. Oh, I do, because one thing that people mention is like the Harry not having the green eyes of his mum, which is like a huge thing in the books. But there's a thing from the first film that they tried to go the extra mile, and so they gave Danny Radcliffe gave him these green colored contact lenses, and they gave Emma Watson like fake buck teeth, and then they scrapped it because Radcliffe's eyes reacted strongly to the contacts, and Watson couldn't talk clearly with the fake teeth in her mouth. And just the idea of being like day one on set, they're like, all right, pop in your prosthetics, put in your eye contacts, and then they're like, all right, and action. And Danny Radcliffe's like, I can't fucking see. And Emma Watson's like, I can't fucking talk.
And Ron continuing to have the easiest gig in film history.
Yeah. I already had red hair.
Fine.
Because there's a story about the twins that play Fred and George that no one believed that they got cast in the film until they showed up to school one day with dyed red hair, because they're like, well, that's the only reason you would do that.
That's hilarious.
And then someone asked, there's the interview where someone's like, are you guys twins in real life? And they're like, no, we met at the audition.
They're great. Yeah.
So that's the first 4 Harry Potter films. There's one piece of dumb IMDb trivia for Goblet of Fire. Moaning Myrtle mentions seeing Polyjuice Potion, and Professor Snape later accuses Harry of stealing the ingredients of Polyjuice Potion from his store. None of our heroes make use of Polyjuice Potion in this movie, but Barty Crouch Jr. does. And
Cool.
It's like
Explaining the
it's just
story.
what happened.
It's just telling you what happens. Moaning Myrtle would be an interesting thing to talk about for a bit, because this film has like got a lot of flack, I think, for how she's very clearly trying to
a pervert.
yeah, she's trying to perv on a naked Harry Potter. But I would say the big,
like 14-year-old.
The weirder part is that this prefect's bathroom that he goes into to hear the egg for the second challenge. It's just this wide open fucking pool with like how much water's being wasted. You know what I'd do if I was?
Yeah, and like, how long would it take to fill up that fucking bathtub?
Yeah, well, presumably it's just eternally there, like a swimming pool. But then like, it doesn't look like he's like sequestered off into a private area where you could get naked. Secondly, if I was Harry Potter, I'm leaving my fucking trunks on. And it's like all the conflict in that scene comes from Moaning Myrtle might see my fucking dick. It's like just wear trunks and you're fine.
No. Yeah, that's it's a good movie. Anyway, so we're kind of now at a, we don't really have any segments to do. We're not ready to rank that franchise yet. We're not ready to continue that franchise yet. We're not even ready to franchise that roulette yet.
We are ready to do a certain meeting though, Richard, if you'd like. A meeting of the elders. Is that what you were segueing into?
It was.
Well, there we go. So this is a segment over on our Discord, but it's through our Patreon. So if you sign up to the Cult Elders tier on Patreon, you will get given a link to a secret Discord server where we ask you your thoughts on the Harry Potter or on the franchise of the Fortnight. And
a lot of talk about Cult Elders this week.
Yeah. Okay. So why's that?
Oh, I don't know. Just what do you think of the segment?
Oh yeah, like should we change it? Well, I think it's useful for something like Harry Potter, if only maybe not just because the episode's already so long. But people have already given us some thoughts, so I have specifically pulled out just the ones talking about the first 4 films, and I will go through them now. So Dan from Hawaii, Tribeca Mode is their username for this week, has said, like many people in my generation, I was absolutely enamored with the Harry Potter book series as I grew up with it. Getting the novels on release day was such an exciting event, and it was genuinely magical how I could discuss the book with most of my friends right away. As for the films, the first 2 are too entwined with my childhood nostalgia for me to have an unbiased opinion.
Interesting what we talked about before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How they're not very good. I actually don't think they're not very good. I think they are kids' movies. I'm far from the minority to believe that Prisoner of Azkaban is the most interesting film from a stylistic and storytelling perspective. I would agree with that. I think what you're saying, Dan, is what we were saying, that it's the best. That's what happens when the best director does a Harry Potter movie. Now, the biggest crime of the films as they developed is twofold. They abandoned the absolutely iconic and beautiful scoring and leitmotifs by John Williams as the series went on, something I did not know until people were bringing it up in the Discord. So that's gone in later films, is it?
I don't think so. But it's interesting that that's Hedwig's theme.
Is it?
And then it just was that piece of music is called Hedwig's theme, and it was just like, it's the leitmotif for the whole series, but it's like it's super iconic piece of music is the theme for the bird. It's
one of the last iconic pieces of movie score, most recent.
Yeah. I mean, you got like Lord of the Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean, Avengers since then.
Avengers, they were like, right, we need to make this feel more iconic to people, though, I think.
Yeah, no.
Like, after it was criticized for not having interesting scores, they, like, pushed, I think, for it to become an interesting score.
No, I think Avengers always had an iconic score. It's Alan Silvestri, but I also two of the real iconic scores that are like crazy that they're only in one movie, or they were only in one movie, is The Incredibles. They're such a great score, and the Monsters Inc. It's like I can't believe that's only from Monsters Inc.
True.
It's so good.
Yeah. Dan also says, wands became guns, and by the time Deathly Hallows came out, I was over it.
This is a spoiler for Deathly Hallows.
Okay, I'll skip that part then. They say, I have some haikus. If it's not too much to ask, they'd be read aloud. So these are Dan's haikus for the first 4 films. Harry Potter 1, such a goofy film, cheesy, wholesome, iconic, instant classic score. Harry Potter 2, Harry is so dumb, too many peas at the feast. The sword looks mad fake. Harry Potter 3, made me laugh out loud, Dumbledore patting Ron's leg when freshly broken. Yeah, nice. An oddly mean thing for Dumbledore to do. Way to go, Michael Gambon, cementing your place as mean Dumbledore. Did you put your name in there? Harry Potter 4, fave book, least fave film. Robert Pattinson is great at silent acting. I have just realised we said we'd talk about Michael Gambon for Goblet of Fire, and then I don't think we did. But I think
he's grumpy, and he says that one line. He
says that one line funny. What do you want from me? Dan says, one last thing. I re-engaged and revisited the books as an adult a few years back when an amazing podcast by 2 lapsed fans tried the books 2 chapters at a time. It's so fascinating to see how many holes in the writing are there from early on. The transphobia, though, throughout. Snape in a dress, hilarious apparently, is one of their examples. Rita Skeeter, arguably coded as a trans woman. Really? Their author, that's fucking psychologically intriguing, isn't it? If her author insert character has been read as a trans woman. And the unintentionally running gag of Harry never touching his wealth and never giving his friends gifts, even his best friend whose family is financially not doing great. It's such a fucking weird part of this. Just don't make Harry rich. It never comes up.
Yeah.
It's never important that Harry is rich. Just don't make him rich. Most critically, an entire plotline of Goblet was painting Hermione as a virtue signalling SJW for trying to free the slaves and making her the butt of the joke because the enslaved elves like being enslaved. That is not part of the movie, I guess.
Yeah, I do. I've just looked up the Rita Skeeter being transcoding thing. It seems like it's based mostly or solely around Skeeter is described as having blonde hair set in elaborate curls that contrasted oddly with her heavy-jawed face.
Right. Interesting. BMD tells us J.K. Rowling is a piece of shit. Well, with that out of the way, I would much rather discuss the films themselves and stray away from the discussion of the author because I personally live in an ideology of separating the art from the artist. If a creator is a shit and heathenistic person, I feel like I should be at liberty to enjoy their work regardless. And I do. I think the Harry Potter books are some of the most truly cinematic books ever written. There's a reason why they inspired so many children to read and why the films are really a no-brainer. Steven Spielberg didn't sign on to direct the first film simply because it would be too easy, and he was right. Yeah. The films...
That's interesting. That he essentially like read the book and was like, this is a slam dunk. Like, there's no point directing it.
Right. The films are easy because the world does indeed feel fleshed out and genuinely iconic. The first, along with the second, are really good adaptations that cover just about every major plot point you needed to tell the story as is, which is definitely easier to do since the books are significantly shorter. The third movie is often considered the best, and while I think it does do some things best out of the bunch, it always just been a bit too mid-2000s emo for me, if that makes sense. The fact they wear hoodies and look all trendy and cool, I don't know, it never really did anything for me.
Sounds like jealousy to me.
It's a me thing, they then say. The fourth is the most quotable for me. Barty Crouch Jr. David Tennant is also in this film, being perhaps my most favoritist line in the series. Sadly, this is where many plot points start to fall by the wayside. The most egregious of being the film dropping Hermione's entire House Elf Liberation Front storyline. We just talked about that, which continues to be ignored throughout the rest of the film, sadly.
That's interesting. I had no idea about that storyline.
Well, the upcoming video game is about trying to stop a house elf revolution. Did you know that?
I
like,
saw
you're actively being like anti it's slavery abolition in that game, apparently. It's so insane. One thing we did talk about as well in the fourth one is because BMD made me think about it by saying they're all dressed all emo in the third one. In the fourth one, all the main boy characters have grown their hair out. And like I know this is the meme, but like I think what people forget is that it's like every male character. Like it's not just Ron and Harry. It's like Neville. It's Malfoy. It's like all the characters look ridiculous. Yeah. It's so funny. Why do one of them has long hair now? Why is it gotta be every single male character has long hair now?
There was a IMDb trivia I didn't grab that was like Harry arguably looks closest to his because Daniel Radcliffe to his book appearance because he's described as having long shaggy hair and Daniel Radcliffe grew long shaggy hair.
Also from Fred's Dead Baby, which I always read as Fred's Dead Baby. They have said to us, I'll keep my take short. I never got into the books as a kid. In fact, I've never read a single one. But I've seen all the movies and thought they were mostly all right. The first one bores the piss out of me, and the one with all the games and Robert Pattinson feels entirely unnecessary to me. If you get rid of all the wizard games, you could just tack the part where Voldemort comes back as a post-credit scene or something, but maybe I'm not remembering correctly. I think a post-credit scene is probably pretty generous, but I do agree that there's just a better, as I said, there's just a better way to get to that scene, I think.
There is a post-credit scene in one of these films as well.
Is there?
Yeah, second one has one of Gilderoy Lockhart's new book, which is like, Who Am I? Because he loses his memory.
And Cheese says to us, fuck, I was too busy to write this today. Here goes. I was the perfect age for the books and movies. I reread the entire series every time a new book came out. It got darker and more mature as I got more mature. The first couple of movies capture that innocent new magical worldness quite well, and the acting is terrible. The major parts, Hagrid, Dumbledore, Snape, were well casted, and part of the reason why the movies did so well. I would agree. I think casting
absolutely
as the ultimate legacy of the Harry Potter movies, I think, more than anything else. I obviously have nostalgia for the movies and for my innocent self who read the books without seeing all the problematic shit. My wife and I rewatch the series at least once a year. They are feel-good, comfort food type movies for us. My first inkling J.K. Rowling was a shit egg was when Shitbag was when Pottermore came out and she had some awful shit about Native American magic written on there. It only got worse for me, as we all know, but I can still... It only got worse from there, as we all know, but I can still appreciate the movies. They make me happy. I won't get into each one, but I appreciate them as a whole series. They go from innocent preteen to emo goth teens to stupid, stubborn young adults, and the movies change with them. P.S. I didn't mind that wand fights turned into gunfights because it made the fight scenes more fun to watch. Also, the fight between Voldemort... Oh, no, that's a movie 5 comment.
It's interesting that talking about J.K. Rowling on Pottermore, because the Pottermore's this website where she would just release extra
continue the franchise without any of the effort.
Yeah, but they're writing stuff about Native American magic, and it's like, I wonder if J.K. Rowling thinks that she's good at representation.
Oh yeah,
because she's going through the effort to talk about Native American magic, and it's like she's using stereotypes. Maybe she thinks that like Kingsley Shacklebolt is like a great, Yeah,
I mean, she is a wealthy middle-aged white woman, right?
Yeah,
like that. This is if you're a wealthy middle-aged white woman and you're not like racist. You are right. That stereotype might have like a conservative stereotype like attached to it, but there is a liberal stereotype attached to it as well, and it's J.K. Rowling. You know, you think you're doing good because you put a black character named Kingsley Shacklebolt into your story, but then you have you start the bathroom debate. You know, the gendered bathroom debate. Yeah. And then write a book about it where it's about like a serial killer who dresses up as a woman and goes into their bathrooms. That, yeah. Fuck, what a fucking like detriment to society.
And then the day before she hadn't tweeted for like a year, and then the day before the Secrets of Dumbledore trailer comes out, she fucking like starts saying some shit again, and it's like you can tell Warner Brothers was like, "Hey JK, do you want to just liven up your social media again?" And this is all she has to talk about.
Or please stop livening up your social media. And she's like, "No, I got something to say."
I hadn't tweeted in a year, but now that you mention it.
And finally, the final message we got from the half-weeb prince says, fuck J.K. Rowling. And that is the meeting adjourned. The meeting of the elders. The meeting of the elders adjourned for this episode. And let's maybe wrap up this episode, this first part of the Harry Potter episode, because we're coming up to 3 hours and we don't really have any other segments to do. Next week will be Harry Potter years 5 to 7, which is 4 movies, confusingly. And then the week after that, we will do the 3 Fantastic Beasts movies. Thank you for listening. And if you have enjoyed this episode, then please consider liking and subscribing at all the places, particularly on Twitter and Instagram. Follow us there at Cult Popture. You can email us at cultpopturemedia@gmail.com. Hop in the Discord, jump in the Cult Elders, if you are a Cult Elder, jump in that server, because you can tell us all that you think about the next 4 films. And also, if you want to, you can sign up to our Patreon over at patreon.com/cultpopture, where one of the things you can do is give us something to talk about in the post-credit scene, which will be coming up right after this music ends. Richard, are you ready to go home?
I don't want to go.
The line is, I'm not going home though, not really, or something like that.
Oh, I thought we were just making David Tennant references. This is last line of Doctor Who.
Welcome along to the post-credit scene, everybody. This is a segment at the end of each episode where if you pay... If you donate $5 or more over at patreon.com/cultpopture,
you
get to give us something to talk about in the post-credit
scene. Richard, what is today's question and who is it from?
Tell me.
Today's quiz. I thought you were going to do it with me.
This is going to be 3 hours long if you don't get the question out shortly.
I'm not going to say it.
Why are you not?
Well, if it's if it's more than 3 hours long, then it will be 4 record files, 1 for each movie we covered. So we got 7 minutes.
No. Fine, I'll find it then.
No. So this one comes to us from Alexander McDonald, who says, how do you feel about more abstract rating systems, i.e. those used by reviewers like Jeremy Jahns, versus the more rigid score-based rating systems, 5 stars, 3 out of 10, B+, etc.?
Rating systems in general, I kind of hate them, and the only reason I rate films anymore at all is because Letterboxd pulled me back into it, because it's so tempting to just rate something out of 5 stars, because I just think thinking about film or anything in this kind of structured hierarchical way makes you make yourself like a film more or less than maybe you actually do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I don't like rating at all. If I have to choose, I would say doing it like A to F is a more attractive way of rating.
Well, do you know how Jeremy Jahns does it?
How does he do it?
So his are good time, no alcohol required, good time if you're loaded, and there's a few other ones, but they're very much he does a full review and then it's just very much and I quite like that. And I, as someone who writes reviews and does reviews now, I haven't included a star rating or anything like that in any of my reviews. People have been asking me to, and we've been having these kind of conversations about it, and it's I know people skim a review and just look for that number, but I would like to develop some kind of system that has that without being specifically a number. I do I've said this plenty of times, but my favorite one is the -10 to +10, because the worst thing a movie can be is boring or unremarkable, and The Room is just as enjoyable as Roma, but they're it's one's a 10 out of 10 and the other one is just as good at being bad. And I think, and I encourage people to watch bad films. I think you learn more about your tastes from watching a bad film than a good film.
I like how you picked a movie called The Room and a movie called Roma, because they're almost the same word. That was really classy.
The Room and Room.
Yeah, you could have done that. Yeah. They're probably about as good as each other.
Enjoyable as each other. I love Room, man. That was a great film.
Yeah, I guess I like rating systems which don't imply something is the best. Like,
I
enjoyment.
guess even on Letterboxd, you have the distinction of like a star rating and then liking or not liking.
Yeah,
which
and
is
I
still like
appreciate
a
that.
rigid one, which like Alexander refers to as a rigid rating system. But there's a bit of nuance.
A great example of that is I rated Philosopher's Stone 3 stars. I also rated Chamber of Secrets 3 stars, but I liked it. Like, I gave it a little love heart. And that, I think, is the difference is between... But even that, like, as soon as you start putting rules to how you feel about something, it becomes insincere. And, like, I don't think there is a ceiling on how much you can enjoy something. And so by saying, like, this is 5 stars, it implies to me that you will never see a movie that is better than this. And that's not true. Like, maybe I will, you know? Maybe I'll see a movie one day that I've enjoyed more than any movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
How do you communicate that?
Yeah, well, and that's how I feel about why I give 5-star ratings out, because I don't think that it should be this unachievable thing.
My version of that is I just wish I didn't do ratings at all.
Yeah,
Maybe I should go and undo my ratings. Every single one.
Yeah, every ranked list is just tied for first.
Yeah.